between Mr. Stansel and the city relative to Docktown Marina and the Docktown Plan. Mr. Stansel has agreed to the settlement prior to the closed session. Thus, upon the City Council's vote approving it, the city has taken final reportable action. Principal terms of the settlement are as follows. Mr. Stansel to vacate Docktown completely by March 28th. City to pay Mr. Stansel a total of $226,000 for Docktown-related compensation, $76,000 of which will go to his attorney. Mutual releases on the part of both parties for all claims, including dismissal of actions. The settlement agreement approved this evening is a public record, and copies will be provided upon request once fully executed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. And that will lead us to item 6, adjournment. The next City Council meeting is a special joint study session with the Planning Commission this evening, right about now. The next regular City Council meeting will be scheduled for March 10th, 2025. Thank you, everybody. And now I'll call to order our next special council meeting. Good evening, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. We continue to offer in-person and remote options for our meetings. The city welcomes public comment on topics within the city's subject matter jurisdiction, and members of the public may provide public comments in person during the meeting or by email to publiccomment@redwoodcity.org as outlined in the agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first under item 4 for topics that are not on the agenda but within the city's subject matter jurisdiction, and again under item 5, the study session item on the Redwood Life project. In-person speakers must turn in a speaker card to the city clerk at the dais to be recognized to speak. Please be sure to indicate the agenda item number which you wish to address. In-person speakers will be called in the order which speaker cards were turned in. Comments that were received via email by 5 o'clock may be read aloud, time permitting, and in any case will be made part of the final meeting record. If there's a high volume of public comment this evening, we may decrease the time allotted for each comment or limit the total time for public comment. In the event this occurs, please feel free to send out your full comments to the City Council at publiccomment@redwoodcity.org. I will now turn it over to the City Clerk to call the roll.
Good evening and thank you. We'll start with the City Council. Councilmember Chu.
Here.
Councilmember G.
Present.
Councilmember Howard.
Here.
Councilmember Padilla.
Present.
Councilmember Sturkin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Aiken.
Present.
And Mayor Martinez Ceballos.
Here.
And now for the Planning Commission. Commissioner Cornejo.
Here.
Commissioner Finch.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Vice Chair Koch.
Here.
And Chair Srnogoratz.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to item 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. And Councilmember Chu, could you do us the honors?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll move on to item 4, public comment. We'll now take public comment on topics that are not on the agenda, but within the city's subject matter jurisdiction. I'll turn it over to the City Clerk to facilitate public comment.
Thank you. At this time, I don't have any in-person speaker cards or emailed comments. I'll do a last call to the audience for public comment on topics other than Redwood Life. Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on to item 5, study sessions. For our topic of the evening, a study session on the Redwood Life project. We are very grateful to be joined by the Planning Commission to receive an update from staff, hear community feedback, and discuss next steps on the project. As a reminder, tonight is a study session, so no formal action will be taken. And that leads me to item 5A, joint study session on Life Sciences Office and Laboratory proposal known as Redwood Life, located at 800 to 3400 Bridge Parkway. Community Development Director Jeff Schwab will introduce the item and give an overview of the presentation, and then turn it over to Eric from Arami & Associates, and the presentation should take about 40 minutes. project applicant Peter Fritz from Longfellow will also give a presentation, and that applicant will have about 10 minutes for their presentation. So before we get started, we'll take public comment on this item, and I'll turn it over to the city clerk to help facilitate.
Good evening, Mayor Martinez-Ceballos and members of the council, Chair Sigurnats, and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight I'm joined by Margaret Netto, our principal planner, and Ryan Kuchnig, our senior planner. They're the primary two staff members that have been working on this project, along with consultants Eric Yurkovich and Troy Reinhalter from Ramey & Associates. In July of 23, the council initiated study of this project and also requested that we conduct a robust city-led community engagement process and actually have a check-in in about a year from the start. In January of 24, we actually brought Ramey & Associates on board, and we've been engaging with the community members to hear their feedback and concerns and comments. And with that, we're pleased to present you with the presentation tonight. Next slide, please. And this is the overview of what we intend to cover tonight, an update of those community engagement efforts, an overview of the sensitivity analysis. This included some transportation, wet utilities, and an overview of other environmental studies that would need to be evaluated further in the environmental document that will come as the next phase, an overview of the public comments that we've received, and an estimated timeline for the project's consideration. And then after we hear from everybody else, the applicant and the community, we'll ask for feedback from individual members of the commission and city council regarding the development of a project alternative. And just to refresh everybody's memory, as part of this process, we agreed to develop an alternative to be studied in the environmental impact report alongside the original project proposal at equal level of detail. And those two will also be joined by the legally required no project alternative and potentially some other alternatives that will be covered in lesser detail. And then finally, we can go to the next slide. We'll wrap up with some questions for the Commission and Council to consider, and we'll revisit these at the end, so I'm not going to repeat them now, but they're also in your packet. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Yurkovich, principal with Ramey & Associates, to give the presentation. And as the mayor noted, it is a little lengthy, but there's a lot to cover.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, Council and Commission. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Eric Yurkovich. I'm a principal with Ramey & Associates. We are the lead consultant for the project team who's helping support the City of Redwood City with the Precise Plan effort. My job this evening is really to give you background on the project to date, talk a little bit about the sensitivity analysis and the technical analysis that our team has done. I'll talk a little bit about our community engagement to date on the process, and in particular, share information about the proposed project alternatives. As Jeff mentioned, this is a relatively long presentation. It comes in a little under 40 minutes, so we appreciate your patience this evening. Undoubtedly, there will be a lot of questions that come up, so if you can hold those to the end, we would appreciate it. And as Jeff mentioned, in July of 23, the City Council initiated a process to prepare a Precise Plan and Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, to update the existing Westport specific plan. Council asked city staff to run a city-led engagement process, to propose and to create a series of technical analysis to support that work, prepare a project alternative that will be studied equally with the project through the environmental review process, and then to analyze the community benefits that have been proposed as part of the process. The Precise Plan and EIR process is a city-led process that would result in new development standards and policies within a Precise Plan, as well as the appropriate environmental review documents. As part of this process, we worked really closely with city staff to tailor our specific engagement activities to hear from community members. This includes a mix of 3 rounds of community meetings as well as informational webinars. I'm going to share a little bit about each of those activities that we did through my presentation, but there's more information in your packet. I'll just also note that during the process, we heard from community members, which I'll talk a little bit about later, about different opportunities to engage in different pieces of information. So we've been adapting our process as we've gone through this engagement approach. To develop the precise plan and environmental impact report, we've really split our process into 4 distinct and overlapping phases. The first phase, listening and learning, we drafted an engagement strategy and then gathered feedback on the proposed project to help inform our technical analysis and the creation of a series of development principles. We next developed 2 project alternatives to the proposed Longfellow development project for discussion. That's the phase we're in currently and the focus of our meeting this evening. At the conclusion of this phase, a preferred project alternative to be studied further in the CEQA analysis will be selected. We'll then develop a series of policies and standards for the precise plan, analyze the proposed Longfellow development project and the CEQA project alternative in the EIR, as well as considering the community benefits offered through this process. Our team are working with city staff to meet the timeline outlined on the previous slide. However, we just wanted to note there are a number of other factors that might impact the overall timeline of the project for the precise plan and environmental impact report, as well as those future entitlements. Several of those considerations include the involvement of external regulatory agencies, the findings and comments that were received on the environmental impact report, as well as the complexity of the entitlement process in the developer agreement negotiations. Longfellow proposed to replace the existing 1990s office park with a life sciences project. The Redwood Life project site is about 84 acres in total size, with about 80 acres of that representing the developed portion of the site, with about 4.5 acres as open area. The area, as you can see from the picture, has a high proportion of impervious cover, meaning that the site is largely covered by surface parking or by buildings. Longfellow submitted a development application for the redevelopment of the site back in 2022. The development project proposes to replace the existing 20 buildings that are on the site with 15 new buildings. The proposal would remove nearly all of the on-site surface parking with a mix of parking in surface parking lots as well as podium parked buildings. This reconfiguration facilitates an approximately 30 acres of publicly accessible open space in the project area. The proposed development project requested an increase of 2.35 million net new square feet of life sciences above the approximately 980,000 square feet that are currently on the site, totaling about 3.3 million square feet. It also included a 104-room hotel as well as a publicly accessible community amenities building. The proposed buildings ranged in height from 4 to 6 stories up to 100 feet, consistent with the allowed zoning. The proposed project estimated an approximately 25-year phasing plan. This map illustrates the location of a few key features in the application: the hotel, the amenity center, parking garages, and some of the parks and open space in the proposed project. As part of the proposed development project, Longfellow offered a package of community benefits aligned with a number of city strategic initiatives. This included a contribution of $85 million for affordable housing in partnership with Eden Housing, a $2 million investment in child care partnership with Build Up San Mateo County, 46,000 square foot community amenity space with multipurpose room and gym, raising approximately a mile of levees along the Belmont Slough for flood protection, and then participation in a transportation management association to improve transit, carpool, and other active modes of travel to the site. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the phases of work that we've gone through to date, in particular some of the community engagement and what we heard during that section. and then we'll tell you a little bit about that process. So first, in our first phases of work, we were really listening to the community to try and understand some of the things they liked about the project or in areas where they had concerns. So some of the things that folks liked about it were the new trails and trail improvements and open spaces and parks in the area. A lot of folks like the improved walkability and accessibility within the campus, to the campus and within the campus for folks. The fiscal benefits that it would accrue to the city, and the opportunity to deal with sea level rise for a contiguous piece of the shoreline. Community members also raised a number of concerns about the project. These included increased traffic, construction impacts including noise, truck traffic, delivery, and the handling of materials on site, as well as the length of the development process. Potential impacts associated with developing on a former landfill, insufficient oversight and regulation of the life sciences industry more generally, and then impacts on the local ecosystems and biodiversity from both construction as well as the development itself, and then impacts from a hotel, particularly nightlight on the slough, as well as traffic considerations. We also heard about the desire to shape the urban design alternatives, receive more information about background topics, and then provide more time to consider the development principle. And we adapted some of our engagement strategy to help meet some of those community desires. First, one of those pivots we made in the process was to host a series of informational webinars starting in the fall of 2024 to really dig into a few topics of interest more specifically. We held these on the landfill, on life sciences, and then on climate change and ecology. We organized panels with a series of regional speakers and agencies to help the project team and community learn more about some of these top concerns. The meeting recordings, presentations, and summaries are all published on the planredwoodlife.com website. Based on some of our initial engagement in the process, we prepared a series of development principles to guide our work. The principles are really intended to provide general guidance for the project at a high level, similar to a guiding principle. They are statements of intent about the broad outcomes that we hope to achieve and are intended really to be guidance for the implementation of the precise plan in EIR. Just to note that they are not intended to be detailed requirements for new development, but really set the stage for those future planning efforts. Those principles are included in your packet this evening and then went through a couple of rounds of community engagement. After hearing the requests from community members to provide their feedback and ideas for site design for the revised alternatives, we added an additional set of engagement activities on site design, both an online survey as well as an in-person workshop. These are a few of the maps that were created by community members during those exercises. Some of the feedback that we received from that urban design exercise, as well as just general comments that we received throughout the process. There are a few kind of key urban design themes that emerged that really helped guide the revised project alternatives that we're going to share, or the preliminary project alternatives that we'll share tonight. About the total project size, about the height and location of buildings, about how far those buildings were set back from the existing residential neighborhood, as well as the Belmont Slough. Street location and parking garage access, and the amount and location of the greenway and the community amenities building. So along with the community engagement process, our team has been conducting a series of technical studies. In December of 24, we published a series of reports on the environment, transportation, and utilities to our website. Those are called sensitivity analysis, as we call them, to really help us understand conditions on the site. The sensitivity analysis really provided an overview of the existing conditions and helped to identify known issues that will be considered or addressed through the precise plan and EIR process. The sensitivity analysis analyzed, in particular, the current conditions for the wet utility system and transportation system, and then evaluated the impacts from future growth on the site. The analysis is not a formal CEQA document and does not identify any specific CEQA findings or determinations or include any specific mitigation measures. Rather, the information is really used as a platform for us as we continue to do our planning work. So I'm going to really provide a very brief overview of the environmental and the utilities analysis, and then go into more detail on the transportation analysis, as it's been identified as an issue of concern. Here is a list of all the resource areas that were addressed in the environmental sensitivity analysis prepared by David J. Powers and Associates. The bolded subjects are the ones that we anticipate as being some of the key resource areas for this project. The report includes information on environmental conditions, considerations, and constraints. And it's based on both site visits, technical reports, including peer reviews of some of the work done by Longfellow and their subconsultants, as well as the analysis of our team. For the utilities system, in particular the wet utilities system, our project team member, Chafin Wheeler, tested the utility systems both under the current conditions as well as 2 future development scenarios to understand how they would be affected by growth in the area. The analysis found that the existing potable water system was nearing capacity, but that there was adequate recycled water to meet the needs of the project. Additional storage capacity would be needed. Likewise, the sanitary sewer system is nearing capacity now, and with the project there would need to be improvements for pump stations, mains, as well as pipelines to meet capacity requirements. They found that the storm drain system itself had sufficient capacity, and likewise a future project on the site would be required to implement the city's green infrastructure plan, regional C3 requirements, as well as reducing the impervious cover on the site with their development proposal. Finally, they looked at the sea level rise and flooding studies that had been done for the site as well. The project includes a combination of elevating buildings and grades, as well as improving the levees along the project shoreline, in addition to some other measures. All of those activities, including the levees, would require coordination with regional, state, and federal agencies who have jurisdiction in those areas. For the transportation system, Hexagon Transportation Consultants evaluated 3 very specific and distinct things. The first was the change in vehicle miles traveled for the project, as will be required under the CEQA analysis. Second, they looked at the change in level of service, or LOS, which really describes the quality of traffic flow in the user experience. And third, they looked at peak spreading, or the congestion at specific times. The analysis concluded that the project would have a less than significant impact on vehicle miles traveled due to densification in site, increase of transit use, the mix of uses on the site overall. The intersection level of service analysis showed that 6 of the 20 studied intersections would be adversely affected by the project in the year 2050. They also found that there were feasible improvements at 4 of those 6 intersections, which I'll go through in just a minute. And likewise, they conducted what's called a peak spreading analysis. This showed that the project would extend the duration of congestion at the gateways leading to and from Redwood Shores by 1 or 2 hours in the year 2050. Now, I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail in the LOS and peak spreading analysis. So, level of service, or LOS analysis, as we call it, is really a rating system that describes the quality of traffic flow at a specific location based on a driver's experience. We use letter grades from A to F, where A means little or no traffic, and F means that there's a lot of traffic delay. These grades are handed out based on the amount of delay that an average vehicle experiences through that intersection at those peak hours. The city's general plan established an LOS, or level of service policy, of D, and is the standard by which we're using to evaluate this work. So the sensitivity analysis studied 3 different scenarios, so existing and current conditions, and then future or cumulative conditions for the year 2050. That includes growth around Redwood Shores and within the Redwood Shores neighborhood, both without the project in the middle and then with the project on the bottom. So under the current conditions, you'll see that all of the intersections are operating at the city's general plan's level of service D or better. In future or cumulative condition scenarios, we see a degradation of the level of service. And even without the project as shown in the middle, so just future growth in the region without the project and a fully occupied existing campus, the projected increase in uses around the area, we have some intersections that are degraded to level of service E and F. And then we looked at the cumulative conditions with the proposed Longfellow project. You see that there's a small difference between those two cumulative scenarios. We have slightly fewer intersections that are at a level of service A and fewer intersections that are at a level of service D. So they've moved from A to B and from D to E. For those intersections that are most affected by future growth in the proposed project, we consider potential improvements at those intersections, at least preliminarily. These included changes to signalize intersections at Marine Parkway and Island Drive, and Bridge Parkway and Redwood Shores Parkway. Changes in signal timing at Shoreway Road and Airport Way can really help to allow southbound right turns to operate at the same times as the eastbound left turns, really to allow overlapping signals and can help address some of those impacts. And then finally, two other intersections that would be affected are within the city of Belmont. Those are at Ralston and El Camino and the northbound ramps at Island and Ralston. At those intersections, there's no feasible improvements due to right-of-way constraints. The city of Belmont, through their general plan process, which just finished recently, also concluded that there are no realistic improvements at those particular intersections in their analysis as well. Now, one of the things that we looked at in the transportation analysis as well is what's called peak spreading. Now, peak spreading occurs when traffic is increased to the point where the amount of desired travel at any point in time exceeds the capacity to move through that link or that intersection overall. As delays become longer overall, people make choices to move their trips early in the day or later in the day to avoid some of that peak congestion. So essentially, they're spreading out the peak over time. So if people make this choice, you can see that peak spreads out, as you can see in these illustrative graphics, from, say, 1 to 2 hours to 3 to 4 hours. Our team also did a peak spreading analysis for the area, particularly looking at the gateways at Marine Parkway and Holly Street for each of those three scenarios that I just walked through a moment ago. So existing volumes are below capacity, and all of the intersections are at acceptable levels currently under the kind of current conditions or existing. In the year 2050, even without the proposed Longfellow development project, regional growth in a fully occupied site is expected to increase the hours of congestion at Marine Parkway to 5 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. With the proposed project, the congestion would remain 5 hours in the morning, but would increase to 6 hours in the afternoon. Again, that peak is being spread out by people over time. Likewise, at the Holly Street, you can see an increase of an hour for each direction for Holly Street within the proposed project from the no project. Now, as Jeff mentioned, as part of this city-led precise plan and EIR process, Council asked us to create a project alternative to the proposed Longfellow development project. That project alternative is going to be studied in full detail like we would study a project under the CEQA analysis. So we'll kind of do two at equal level. To develop the alternatives, we considered community feedback, the site planning and design session we did with community members, our analysis, as well as the development principles. We really used those as inputs in shaping these project alternatives. We also just generally want to acknowledge that the project alternatives cannot and do not address all of the comments that we've received to date on the proposed project and the project alternatives themselves. So, for example, increased traffic was raised as one of the top community concerns. The alternatives consider reducing the size of the project and then also providing fewer parking spaces on site, which are two very specific ways that the project alternative can reduce traffic to the site. However, those design changes are really only part of the solution. The precise plan and environmental impact report will include a circulation plan, transportation demand management strategies, as well as potential mitigation measures to help reduce traffic and congestion further. Several of those might be codified through the conditions of approval for a project in the future. There are also a number of other topics listed here, and there's many others that have been raised in the process that once we initiate the full environmental impact report process and the precise plan, we'll be able to begin to analyze and address some of those issues through policies, standards, and implementation measures. These include everything from construction and phasing to natural and climate hazards, as well as impacts on the local ecology. Now, just a reminder, I shared this just a few minutes ago. This is the proposed Longfellow development project. The proposed project, again, consists of 15 buildings at approximately 2.35 million net new square feet of life sciences, totaling about 3.3 million total. And again, it includes about 30 acres of open space, as well as that 104-room hotel. Two alternatives for consideration and discussion were developed. These alternatives really begin to test a series of urban design strategies that really are intended to help address some of the concerns raised during the process. Alternative 1 consists of 13 buildings and reduces the project size 10% from the proposed development project. It removes building N12 near the neighborhood and lowers buildings at the high point of the site, reducing the overall project size by about 244,000 square feet. It retains the hotel use, and public open space is increased to 33 acres. Alternative 2 consists of 12 buildings and reduces the project size 20% from the proposed development project. It removes buildings N12 and N7, reducing the project size by 459,000 square feet. It also retains the hotel use, and then public open space is increased to 35 acres. Over the next few slides, I'm going to break these maps down into some simpler graphics to really illustrate how the alternatives start to address some of the concerns that we heard through the process. So we heard that the proposed development project was too many square feet and too tall. Those taller buildings were too close to the neighbors. So some of the design strategies that we test were to reduce the number of buildings, especially close to the neighbors, lowering the building heights in specific locations, and reducing the overall project size. So this map illustrates the proposed building heights for the Longfellow development project. The darker blue colors represent the tallest buildings. These are proposed approximately 90 to 100 feet in height, or about 6 stories. Medium blue buildings range from about 75 to 90 feet, or 5-story, and the lightest blue buildings are under 60 feet. Those buildings are generally the parking structures and the community amenities building. Alternative 1 is shown on the screen now. This alternative removes building N12 on the northeast property line and lowers the building and garage heights closest to existing homes. It also begins to lower the heights in the center of the site, which is also the high point of the site, to help reduce visual impact. Here we have alternative 2. This option removes buildings N12 and N7 along the property line. It lowers building heights, reduces the size, and sets back the parking garages along the property line. It also lowers building heights at the high point of the site to reduce visual impact as well. Here's a visualization showing the removal of building N12 with a key map in the upper right-hand corner. This is the existing site condition as shown from that area. This illustration shows the proposed Longfellow development project with additional landscaping along the property line. And then here's the same illustration of alternatives 1 and 2 with the proposed landscaping along the property line. So again, that building N12 was removed as part of this analysis. We also heard the proposed Longfellow development project buildings were too close to the neighbors and too close to the Belmont Slough. So we tested setting the buildings further back from the residential neighborhood as well as the slough, and then lowering the building heights as you saw in the previous slides. So this map illustrates the building setbacks for the proposed Longfellow development project from the eastern property line. The map includes black lines which show the setback area to the property line and blue lines that show the distance to the closest neighbor or residence, north and south of Island Drive. We measure the setback distance from the property line. However, there's generally additional distance between the property line and the homes on either side. So north of the entrance at Island Drive and Marine Parkway, that tends to be people's backyards. South, it tends to be a parking area and a drive aisle. On average, buildings are approximately 135 feet from the property line. And again, this distance is a little closer at the site entrance at Marine and Island Drive at about 95 feet, but increases to 150 and 180 north and south of the entrance. Garages G2 and G3 are the two closest building to existing neighbors. Now, just want to note that the main entrance at Island Drive and Marine Parkway has the smallest setback, and you'll see that in the alternatives as well. But this area tends to be further away from folks. It's set back about 100 feet from Marine Parkway and with some open space that you can see on the diagrams. This map shows alternative 1. On average, the building setbacks increase from about 135 feet to 225 feet from the property line. You can see again the setback distance at the site entrance from Marine Parkway increases to about 105 feet and 450 to 230 feet north and south from the entrance at Island and Marine. Again, garages 2 and 3 are the closest to existing homes, but that distance is now 250 feet. And finally, this is alternative number 2. It shows that the building setbacks have been increased overall to an average of about 270 feet from the property line. The setback distance is again is 105 feet at the entrance with 450 feet to 620 feet north and south of Marine Parkway and Island Drive. Again, G2, garages G2 and G3 are the closest buildings at about a distance of 250 feet. This set of illustrations show cross sections from the eastern property line to parking garage G2. Again, this is one of the closest points between the proposed development projects and existing homes. The top image shows the existing condition. The building is set back from the property line with, you can see, open space and parking in between. The middle image shows the proposed Longfellow development project. The setback is 95 feet from the property line with a narrower strip of open space and landscaping and Longfellow Lane running between the property and the parking structure. Alternative 2 increases the setback from the property line from about 100 feet to 200 feet and removes Longfellow Lane. The next set of images shows you a few visualizations from Marine Parkway at Island Drive. This one shows existing site conditions. Again, the open space along Marine Parkway shown in this image is actually not part of the project site. The project site is set back about 100 feet from the entrance to the site. And this illustration here shows the proposed Longfellow development project. Again, because the property is set back from the street about 100 feet, the setback itself is another 100 feet on top of that, so it's about 200 feet away from Marine Parkway. The alternatives, in addition, increase that distance by about 10 feet and then also reduce the upper story step backs of the buildings themselves to reduce the visual impact. Here we have the proposed building setbacks from the Belmont Slough for the project. On average, these buildings are about 80 to 100 feet from the slough. Alternatives 1 and 2 both set the buildings back from the Belmont Slough 160 feet. While there are still streets and paths in the space, it does allow for more distance between the buildings and the slough, providing more opportunities for planting, amenity spaces, as well as shading in the area. Here are, again, some cross sections showing from the property line to N12. This is along the western side of the project site and to the Belmont Slough. Again, the top image shows existing site conditions. You can see here that the Bay Trail, open space, as well as Bridge Parkway and surface parking to the building. The middle image shows the proposed Longfellow development project. You can see that the setback is smaller, but you can see the Bay Trail, open space, and Bridge Parkway in that image as well. And then alternative 2 changes that building from a life sciences building to a parking garage. That structure is set back 160 feet from the slough edge, and the structure's height is actually reduced by 40 feet overall. We also heard that the proposed Longfellow Lane and parking access were too close to the existing residential neighborhood. So we tested shifting the lane internal to the site and moving some of the parking further away from the residents themselves, and generally lowering the amount of parking on the site as the project gets smaller. This map illustrates the proposed project in the proposed Longfellow Lane and parking structure locations in orange and gold, respectively. The lane, you can see, runs along the eastern edge of the property line near Marina Parkway in the proposed project. Alternatives 1 and 2 really shift the location of Longfellow Lane internal to the site away from existing homes. The 2 structures still remain on Longfellow Lane, G2 and G3, but those have been lowered in height, have smaller widths, and they have been set back further from the property line and the residents adjacent to them. To accommodate that reduction in parking along Longfellow Lane, a life sciences building along the slough has been replaced with a parking structure further away from the neighborhood, and that was the building we just saw in the previous set of cross sections. Lastly, we heard from community members that they were too far, the community amenity space in particular was too far from the existing neighborhood, and that there was a great opportunity to enhance the greenway for the community while buffering the neighbors from the project. This map shows the amenity center and greenway in the proposed Longfellow development project. So the proposed project includes, again, nearly 30 acres of public open space and a 46,000 square foot amenities space with community multipurpose room and gym. Alternative 1 tested the idea of moving that community amenity space closer to the neighborhood, incorporating the amenity space into a building ground floor. The alternative includes 33 acres of public open space, as well as an increase in the greenway width. And then alternative 2 really shifted the community amenity space closer to the neighborhood as well. The alternative included 35 acres of open space with an increase in greenway width associated with the removal of buildings N7 and N12. In February, we hosted an in-person workshop at the Redwood Shores Library and launched an online survey about these alternatives. In general, we found that the online respondents had a more favorable response to the urban design alternatives than the in-person responses, but still suggested some improvements overall. The following slides summarize some of what we heard. On project scale and heights, we heard a desire for further reduction in project size to be considered. Some of the buildings were still too tall, particularly the ones near the site entrance on Island and Marine Parkway. And there was questioning about the need to maintain a hotel in the alternatives. Of the alternatives, there did seem to be more support for alternative 2 in the online survey. There was strong support for the increased residential setbacks shown in the alternatives, although some participants were still worried about the visual impacts of the buildings and the location of the buildings in relation to the existing residential neighborhood. We heard people generally appreciated the additional setback from the Belmont Slough shown in the alternatives, and we did hear continued concerns about the sea level rise and flooding, as well as the impacts on local ecology, both from construction as well as operation of the project. We heard people generally appreciated the widening of the greenway, but heard concerns about noise from the amenities in the greenway, as well as concerns about shifting the amenity space closer to the neighborhood. And then finally, we heard a strong appreciation for shifting Longfellow Lane internal to the site, as well as the importance of the transportation demand management measures that we asked about. We also heard, though, about continued concerns about traffic, the availability of transit to the site, as well as emergency access, particularly during those peak periods of congestion to the area. With that, I'm going to hand the presentation back over to Jeff to summarize next steps and questions for the evening.
Next slide. Thank you, Eric. Again, we wanted to summarize that the next steps for you briefly. One of the most important next step is for us to ultimately select a project alternative to be studied in the environmental impact report alongside the original project. The full environmental analysis will include traffic modeling and utilities work, more in-depth analysis of the other alternatives, the no project is required by law, and potentially an environmental alternative. They'll determine mitigation measures and do a lot of additional studies to support that. We will also commence a community benefits analysis and a fiscal impact analysis of the project and the alternative. So you have all of that information as it comes back to you. And then we will do some estimates on the cost of the utility and transportation improvements that would be required. Next slide. And maybe it will be best to come back to these questions after we have the applicant's presentation and the public comment. Thank you. Maybe I can call up Peter Fritz from Longfellow Development to do the applicant's presentation.
Jeff's a little taller than me. Good evening, Council and Planning Commission. It's a pleasure to see you again this evening. My name is Peter Fritz. I'm with Longfellow Real Estate Partners. I want to thank Jeff and Eric and the Ramey team for the great work overviewing the process to date and a lot of effort that went in over the last 18 months, which consisted of the community engagement, the sensitivity analysis, and drafting these project alternatives. The last time we were in front of you in July 2023, we spent extensive time reviewing the many community benefits which this project affords. Tonight, we don't have the time nor is there the focus to go into these benefits, but I want to again remind Council and the Commission of the many benefits possible with this project, but the need for us to move forward into the EIR so we can get to the community benefit negotiations. We are here tonight to talk about the reduced project alternatives, and specifically Alternative 2, which has garnered the most consensus among the community, as Eric mentioned. Our ask tonight is for Council and the Commission to provide feedback to staff to start the environmental impact review, which was initiated back in July of 2023. And that consists of studying the full application as well as Alternative 2, which we fully studied, as Ramey has mentioned. A key effort throughout this last 18 months has been the sensitivity analysis. Now, notably, because there's already development on the site, there were no environmental factors that were identified that would preclude additional development. However, as Ramey mentioned, these are not full environmental analysis, and an EIR is necessary to be able to respond to questions that have been outstanding for many years now and to identify mitigation measures. feedback we heard throughout the last 18 months have effectively fallen into two buckets. That's environmental, which again will be addressed through the EIR, and that needs to be done, as well as developmental factors. And those have mostly revolved around quality of life concerns of our neighbors, specifically reducing visual impact, proximity to neighbors, reducing traffic, and proximity to habitat. And that gets us to alternative 2 tonight. And again, you just saw a lot of this from the Ramey team, but there's some major changes here, so it's worth going through again if you'll bear with me. The most important change, it's not maybe not obvious, is the reduction in the project size. A 20% reduction, 500,000 square feet, almost 500,000 square feet, which is a very significant reduction, especially at the point in time where we haven't even started an environmental impact review. And that's done through removing the N7 and N12 buildings, where you see the red X's on the bottom left and bottom right. The reason those buildings were removed is they were the closest buildings to neighbors. And one of the biggest design features is the shifting of Longfellow Lane, which was previously along the southern border, inboard. So that does two things. That moves traffic and cars and activity inboard, shielded by the buildings, and it increases that greenway, that physical buffer between commercial buildings and residences. The parking structures, as you move kind of from the red X's to the middle of the plan, again, they've been significantly reduced. They are shorter, they are 62 feet more narrow, and they've been pushed back 80 feet, increasing that greenway depth. And buildings N1 and N2, even though there are not neighbors directly across from it like other buildings, they've been pushed back 10 additional feet, and the top of the buildings have been stepped back. The overall buildings have been pulled into the site, doubling the setback along the slough, and the 4 buildings in the middle of the site, which sit at the highest elevation, have been reduced as well. Here is a comparison of the original plan on the left and the alternative 2 on the right. And I think what you'll generally see is obviously a smaller plan, but also that the plan significantly moves the density and the mass of the project to the north away from neighbors and greatly increases this green buffer. Now, this is kind of hard to see because it's so small on the screen, but this is 84 acres. So that green space there, while maybe looking on only an inch on the screen, is a very significant depth. Another thing to mention is this project will be phased over 25 years. That does not mean 25 years of continuous construction or pile driving like it's often cited, but rather this development will occur in increments within a 25-year period. Focusing in on the greenway, which is so critical, a few dimensions I'd like to call out. The first is 170 feet, which you see on the top image. That's the distance in the original application between the closest building to the closest neighbor. And the Longfellow Lane is actually within that. By moving the buildings, setting them back, and moving Longfellow Lane, we've increased that to 250 feet. So at no point in Alternative 2 is any building or structure closer than 250 feet. That distance is the distance that's there today. So in Alternative 2, no buildings will be any closer to homes than is there today. And in fact, with these significant setbacks, like 670 feet and 440 feet, the average setback is greater than the average setback of the buildings that are there today. Another couple dimensions to mention, the distance from the closest homes to the N1 and N2 buildings in the bottom middle are 400 feet and 500 feet. And the distance from Marine Parkway to the closest building is 205 feet. That's now 5 feet further that's there today. This summarizes a lot of the changes we've just gone through, but I want to highlight with a reduction in the project, you have a reduction in people, cars, traffic, and parking stalls. To help visualize and give some additional cross sections, which the Ramey team did not show, this helps to visualize the neighbor's perspective. So if you look on the top right, you'll see where that section B is. If you were a neighbor on the southeast portion of the site, looking at the development, the top you see the existing buildings, a 2-story building. In the middle, you see a new building, which is larger, but with that greenway, we're adding significant landscaping and large mature trees to screen that. With Alternative 2, you completely remove that. So it's actually an improved condition from what's there today with no building. And you saw these images earlier, but again, just to highlight what is there today, what the building will look like with no additional landscaping. When you put the landscaping in, you can barely see it. That's what it looks like with no landscaping and no building. And when you put the landscaping in, you have nice views of skies and green trees. We also wanted to look at...
Excuse me. Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you. We're going to have public comment later, but if you could hold any comments until the very end, we want to make sure. Right, I understand, but we want to make sure that we can get through the presentations without interruption, so please.
All right, so to continue, we wanted to look at not only the views from the immediate neighbors, but the community wider back. And so the image on the left again shows what's there today with the existing mature trees. And when you put in buildings N1 and N2, as you can see, you can barely see the buildings, and we can add even more landscaping to further screen it. We also looked at, as you're approaching the site, hopefully on bike or pedestrian, walking towards campus, with the setbacks and step backs on the revised architecture. On the right, with alternative 2, you can barely see the building. Same with this view as you move further down. So as you can see with alternative 2, we have made some major changes to the project, directly responding to the feedback we received from the community, specifically these quality of life concerns. And it's with those major changes that we're very pleased that nearly 70% of the members of the group Stop Redwood Life support studying Alternative 2 in the EIR. And that is because they recognize and appreciate these major changes, and also we need to get into the EIR to study the questions that have been outstanding for many years now. It's quite rare to get that kind of feedback this early in a project like this, and that's a testament to the vision set by council and great work by staff and Ramey to work towards a win-win-win solution. Now, there are still some members of the community that do not want any development, and you're likely to hear from them tonight, but that sentiment is not shared by all. In fact, there's many members of the community who approach us, and I know have approached council with emails saying they support the project, but they don't feel comfortable speaking in public. I'd like that to be considered tonight. There have also been some additional requests like the hotel and maybe some changes to N1 and N2, and we are very committed to achieving a win-win-win solution, and we are committed to continue to work with council and commission and staff in the community to achieve that win-win-win solution. But the longer this process goes on, the longer there's delays, the longer until we get to entitlement hearing, of which the EIR is the first step, we'll have less flexibility financially to accommodate changes in the future. So that's why, again, our request is that you provide feedback to staff tonight to begin the EIR process, studying both the original plan and Alternative 2, so we can make a informed decision in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for the presentation, and Jeff for the city presentation here. Before we move on to public comment, and I'll turn things over to the city clerk really quickly, I did just want to preface with my own comment that, I'm very grateful that we have so many people here in the room today and have made the effort to be here in person to share your public comment. I do want to make sure that, we do have lots of people with lots of viewpoints, so I want to make sure that everyone feels safe to share their thoughts and express their voice. So if we can just refrain from interrupting with either applause or cheers or boos, any sort of those comments, we really want folks to take the full 2 minutes that they have and make the most of it. So I just wanted to preface our conversation with that. So thank you. And I'll give it over to the city clerk. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Any last call for speaker cards on this item? Thank you. Thank you. And once we receive all the speaker cards, we will close the list of speakers. And so, Mayor, we have about 20 speaker cards at this time and 11 written comments. So, thank you.
Let's stick with 2 minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you. We'll start with the in-person speakers. I'll call 2 at a time. There is a timer on the top of the podium. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will begin when you start speaking. When you see the orange blinking light, that's your 30-second warning. The red light with the beep means your time is up. And so we will start with Adelaide Nye. and Adelaide will be followed by Mary Morrissey Pardon.
Good evening. I'm Adelaide Nye. I live in Redwood Shores. Other city taxpayers think the massive Redwood Life project can't hurt them financially. It's a huge mistake to think this. There is that darn 42-acre unlined landfill which lies fermenting beneath it. It borders the Belmont Slough, which flows into our bay. Hundreds of pilings will have to be pounded through the landfill to build on it. Billions of pounds of pressure will happen during construction. It'll be like having a Godzilla jumping up and down on this landfill for years. Even a small child knows that if you jump on a rotten orange, the goop spills out to the sides. Sadly, on the side is our bay. Worse yet, sea level rise will deeply strain bayside landfills. It makes the toxic pollution within them tend to leak out. I know. I was on the team that wrote the sea level rise report for the San Mateo County Grand Jury in 2021. Please read it. So what are these potential future financial risks? When pollution flows into the bay, someone has to pay a lot. There are EPA fines, engineering firm costs, cleanup, new construction, and lawsuits. Unexpected costs can reach $100 million. All city taxpayers deserve not to be left holding the bag. Here's how our city council can mitigate this risk and protect us. Require that the development agreement with Redwood Life carry a special forever insurance policy to cover the cost of any future pollution from their landfill. City council members, protect your legacy. Ensure that we taxpayers are not left holding the bag for possible future toxic side effects from this still massive Redwood Life project. Thank you.
Hey everyone, before we get on to the next comment, that's an example of the sort of interruption that we really don't need so that we can get to everybody's time today. So please refrain from clapping, booing, cheering. Thank you.
Mary Morrissey Pardon, welcome. And the next speaker will be Ken Chan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Planning Commission. My name is Mary Morrissey Pardon. I've been a resident of Redwood Shores since 1989 and a former president of the Redwood Shores Owners Association who worked with the city of Redwood City and the General Improvement District, the GID Committee, in the formation and the development of Redwood Shores. I would be generous in saying, and this is my opinion, that out of the 12,000 residents who live in Redwood Shores, that there aren't concerns. I believe that there's probably 120 unique concerns that are all anti-development, not necessarily just anti-Redwood Life, but anti-development. And that has been my experience, even going back to the GID committee starting in 1964. I very much support the proposal of Redwood Life and, of course, their alternative. It is obviously, in my opinion, good for Redwood Shores and the city in general, and we should be welcoming it with open arms. A year and a half ago, the City Council gave two directions: that Longfellow work with neighbors to come up with an alternate that satisfies their main concerns of visual impact and proximity of new buildings to neighbors. And two, that a sensitivity analysis be conducted to identify preliminary environmental issues. Longfellow did exactly what they were asked to do and responded with a generous 20% reduction in square footage. The alternative carries the downside of less economic benefits for the city, but it is what the council asked for. Regarding environmental issues, none were identified, and in fact, the investment Longfellow is proposing is actually a necessary improvement to manage stormwater runoff and protect against sea level rise. Instead of environmental threats from this proposal, the opposite is true. The longer we delay, the longer we are exposed to flood risk and poor stormwater management. I wish there wasn't so much fear and skepticism. That has been my experience, that we have a 1% people that are afraid. But I am grateful for the sound
Ms. Morrissey,
judgment
if you
and
don't
broad
mind.
understanding of our Planning Commission and City Council members. I know you won't be voting today, but when you do, please advance this proposal without delay. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Ken Chan, who will be followed by Louis Kwong.
Good evening, members of the Redwood City Planning Commission and City Council. My name is Ken Chan, and I'm the Senior Organizer with the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. We work with communities and their leaders to produce and preserve quality, affordable homes. I'd first like to extend our appreciation to staff for all their hard work in putting together this their presentation and report tonight. That's brought us together. On behalf of HLC, and as highlighted in our letter, I'd like to extend our appreciation to Longfellow Real Estate Partners for their willingness to work with our nonprofit affordable housing developer friends like in Eden Housing to ensure that your low-income Bayshore community members living near Redwood Life evolve. The proposal will continue to be housed in your community. This partnership between a commercial-only and nonprofit affordable housing developer with over 50 plus years of building and management, by the way, is a great example of how a city like yours can produce and preserve homes at the deepest levels of affordability. It's a proactive plan that's designed to protect your most vulnerable residents, and it safeguards them against displacement and or becoming unhoused. Finally, we'd like to commend the developer's commitment of approximately $80 million to create affordable homes for your community members here in Redwood City. Thank you for your continued leadership, and we urge you to support a plan that keeps your low-income community members housed where they are now, and also while allowing for the greatest feasible number of homes to be created in your city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Louis Kwong, who will be followed by Sarah Morgan.
Good evening. My name is Henry Yoon. I'm reading this on behalf of Louis Kwong, who could not be here today. I'm a property owner in Redwood City and hopeful future restaurant owner in Redwood City. I'm speaking in strong support for the Redwood Life Evolve proposal, and let me tell you, this project, by bringing more well-paying jobs to the city, will help my restaurant dream come true. Aside from that, this transformative project promise to bring significant environmental, economic, community benefit to our area, aligning with the values and aspiration of our city. Finally, I know some people in Redwood Shore may not like this project. It's about them, but it's not. This world-class campus affects all Redwood City residents in terms of paying for affordable housing, early childhood education, and taxes that are needed for basic city services. I would like to remind my friends in Redwood Shores that they are part of the broader fabric of our city. The development in other parts of Redwood City is the reason why their parts are clean and well-maintained. Their roads are paved, water runs, police come when they call. It is not fair, and it's frankly insulting for them to throw up blockade when even the sensitive and thoughtful mid-rise development comes to an underutilized and outdated most parking lot in a corner of a neighborhood. Neighborhoods across Redwood City are enduring growth and change. We're in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Morgan, who will be followed by Johnny DeRosa.
Hello, I'm speaking on behalf of Redwood Shores residents Sarah Magan, who couldn't be here today because she's caring for her children. My family bought our home in Redwood Shores in 2023. We love it here, and we are thrilled to raise our 2 young children in this community. As a resident, my absolute top concern is the evident ongoing sea level rise encroaching on our neighborhood. When we were considering moving here, we could already see a softening of home values in Redwood Shores around this issue relative to other areas we were considering. As someone recently in the market to purchase our first home, we saw the paralysis around climate resiliency already factored into the home values, and it can only get worse. Unless there is a proactive and swift demonstration that the community can come together to reinforce levees, we will all be in deep trouble, pardon the pun. Regarding one of the main arguments against this project, the objections around emergency access and increased traffic are misplaced. Redwood Shores is one of the only communities in the whole peninsula that enjoys broad parkways for emergency access. Also, given the directionality of work commutes, it doesn't seem that having more employees coming into Redwood Shores would pose much of a burden for residents leaving at the same time, and vice versa. Adding amenities and third spaces to Redwood Shores, making it a more walkable and bikeable community, would be a boon to families who live here. We We have a decent bus line already in place to help mitigate new traffic. There are still more opportunities for public transit that people would actually use. Please advance this proposal as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Johnny DeRosa, who will be followed by Chuck Schultz.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Planning Commission, staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Johnny DeRosa. I'm the Executive Director of Peninsula Chinese Business Association, PCBA, and I'm speaking in support of Redwood Life Evolve proposal. Our nonprofit organization is committed to enhance education, promoting economic development, supporting local small businesses, and strengthening the community by helping those in need. This proposal aligns with our goals, and the city shares this objective. I want to focus on two things. First, let's consider what is at stake. This proposal offers solution to two significant challenges facing Redwood City and the shores: sea level rise and substantial budget deficit. Redwood Life Evolve invests in this property to ensure that leading life science companies stay and expand in Redwood City. Without the proposed upgrades, these companies are likely to leave, causing the city to miss out $1 million in crucial revenues needed to provide essential services. Additionally, Redwood Shore is highly vulnerable to sea level rise. This proposal outlines enhancements to the seawall that will considerably decrease the area's flooding risk. I represent a group of ethnic-owned business organizations, and our members' businesses will suffer if this project and similar initiatives fail. The city cannot afford to miss this opportunity. Therefore, a CEQA study must be conducted concerning this proposal. Secondly, Longfellow deserves recognition for enduring such a lengthy approval process. The last time I spoke in the support of this proposal here was a year and a half ago. Longfellow has been working diligently, listening to their neighbors and adjusting. This 20% reduction in the project reflects a substantial compromise and is hugely generous. Longfellow dedication and flexibility show that they are the most exceptional community partners that Redwood City could desire, and that they will manage this campus to the highest standards. I strongly urge you to initiate an environmental studies of the proposal as we work to get us a brighter, safer, healthier, and more vibrant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck Schultz. And Chuck will be followed by Rona Gundrum.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Schultz. I'm a resident in Redwood Shores. We've lived in Redwood Shores for about 10 years now. I'm coming here to voice my support for this proposal. I would second the comments of all the folks that came before me, maybe just add a couple additional vignettes. We'll take walks along that Belmont Slough right now, and I think, when you think about development, you go, okay, you're going from, sort of nature to some buildings. I can tell you right now, that place is more like, set from The Last of Us than like some bucolic environment. I mean, you're walking along the sidewalk, you've got pavement next to you, you've got parking lots stretching out there. When I look at the images that they showed here, that's a huge improvement from my standpoint. And I guess, I guess the other one that I would add is I've been in biotech all my life, so you can say, okay, maybe I've got a conflict here. The San Francisco Bay Area, this is where biotech was born. Genentech started here in 1976. It's no longer the case. Boston has taken that crown from us. And I think, when you've got companies leaving, Oracle cleared out, Tesla's leaving, when you've got an opportunity to bring some, vitality back in here, I think we should take it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rona Gundrum, who will be followed by Amy Buckmaster.
Good evening, all. I'd like to acknowledge city staff and consultants' time and efforts in providing the community with information throughout the city-led process, as well as their hard work incorporating community feedback into potential reduced alternatives. While it's welcome to see increased greenway, locating buildings further back from residences and slough, and reducing the mass and visual impacts of some of the buildings, the alternatives do not adequately address building heights in the 100-foot tall range, not including additional rooftop mechanical height, nor the density with only a 10 to 20% reduction in size. Picture this. 3 million square feet is the equivalent of Salesforce Tower. 100 feet is the height of the Statue of Liberty and also Big Ben. A more meaningful CEQA analysis would include a truly reduced mid-size alternative of, let's say, 2 million square feet, with the hotel removed to free up space for offices and labs, which, along with other building and layout changes, would enable building heights to be brought down. I would like to see the site and Longfellow be successful. Premium, well-appointed office and lab spaces are in demand. Premium, well-appointed does not have to mean 100-foot-plus tall buildings. It's possible to design a project that allows for tenant growth without having 100-foot-plus tall buildings, which would forever alter the character of our peaceful bayfront residential community and our quality of life. I respectfully request that City Council direct staff and the consultants to develop a truly reduced plan alternative to be studied in the CEQA process, along with the No Project Westport plan at full capacity and the proposed Longfellow plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Buckmaster, who will be followed by Felicia Vasquez.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Martinez Ceballos, excuse me, members of the council and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Amy Buckmaster, President and CEO of Chamber San Mateo County, a resident of Redwood City, and a proud resident of Redwood Shores. On behalf of the Board of Directors and member organizations of Chamber San Mateo County, we've been strong supporters of the project since its inception more than 5 years ago, and have formally endorsed and advocated for this project during this time. However, recognizing that modifications may need to be considered to this proposed project, Chamber San Mateo County strongly supports Alternative 2 being studied as outlined in the city staff report. I would be remiss, however, if I did not reinforce that Chamber members were more in favor of the original application than a reduced project alternative, because a larger project brings more jobs, more ongoing revenue for the city, and more community benefits that fund top city priorities such as childcare and affordable housing. However, we realize that compromises that must be made to reach a balance in moving complicated, community-involved projects forward, and that this is why the Chamber is supporting Alternative 2. We recognize the hard work that the city staff, outreach consultants, and applicant and the community has yielded a compromise with a broader support. The neighbor support is shifting with what now appears to be around 65% of the members of the opponent group, Stop Redwood Life, now supporting Alternative 2. Would the developer and the previously opposing neighbors agree on alternative, we strongly encourage moving forward with just move forward, please, fast. It has taken 5 years to get to this point, and it's too long. The council now has a win-win project, and it's looking forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Felicia Vasquez, who will be followed by Anthony Urbina.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Martinez Ceballos, members of the council, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for being here and for listening to us. My name is Felicia Vasquez. I'm a 15-year Redwood Shores resident, past president of Redwood Shores Elementary School. I sit on the board of directors for Footsteps Childcare, and I'm a new volunteer for Belmont Redwood Shores Little League for my son. As you can tell, I am an engaged Redwood Shores resident, an engaged resident of my community. As a mother with a young family, I value the many community benefits of the proposed Redwood Life project, including the new community space, new parks and restaurants, as well as Redwood Life's commitment and contribution to protecting the shores against sea level rise. Many of those I talk to in my neighborhood and my wider community support the Redwood Shores project. But I will also tell you there's misinformation being spread in my community. Council, please do not listen to misinformation. If you have questions, I urge you to lean on staff or the technical consultants. I believe we can all benefit from their answers. I'm here to ask, please do not delay any further. This process has been going on for years and the EIR still has not begun. I would hate to see Redwood City become a city known for unnecessary processes and project delays. I love my home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anthony Urbina, who will be followed by Nels DeLander.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Urbina. I'm here tonight representing several hundred Redwood City residents who are members of the union I'm with and also other affiliates of the San Mateo Building Trades Construction Council. I want to thank you, the mayor, council members, and commissioners for the diligence you're showing to make sure this project is in the interest of Redwood City residents. We urge that you move forward with studying Alternative 2. It's rare that labor, community, and the developer are asking for the same thing. We also want to acknowledge the willingness of the community and the developer to compromise. The original application was submitted 4 years ago. It's time to move forward and finally study the project. Delays mean this community misses out on the developer for the developer to compromise. The original application was submitted 4 years ago. As an example of the developer's commitment to this community is the workforce-related community benefits the project will provide us. Small businesses in Redwood City will benefit when tens of millions in construction wages are being recirculated back into the local economy. This is the result of a written commitment to the contractors that will use the local construction workforce. Redwood City youth and at-risk workers will have an opportunity to gain entry into a life-changing career pathway into the middle class. Redwood Life will be built each step of the way with the help of apprentices from our various apprentice programs. Growth in all the peninsula communities is inevitable. To achieve a healthy job-housing balance, we must sometimes accept there are some residents that means uncomfortable changes, but the project brings the kind of benefits to Redwood City that the changes experienced would not hold us back from approving an excellent contribution to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nels DeLander, who will be followed by Stephen Goodale.
Good evening, Chair, council members, city staff, and city council mayor. My name is Nels DeLander. I'm representative of Carver's Local 217 of San Mateo County. We are supportive of the following forwarding of studying Alternative 2. Longfellow has agreed to use union labor for this project. By having the commitment, they are not only taking care of the labor, but they're also helping the community. By using union contractors that provide medical, the worker and the families do not need to depend on county medical facilities funded by taxpaying dollars. Utilizing union labor, the workers get a family supporting wage that have the ability to take care of themselves and their families. Union labor also ties into utilizing apprenticeships and the best training available in the state. That means not only the contractors will be giving the developer extraordinary product, but to maximize the safety for the creation of the development. This project will not only support workers, but gives local workers the opportunity to work on their own community. By doing so, it helps businesses in Redwood City by knowing that the funds on the project will be spent locally, helping the economy of Redwood City. This is not a vote tonight. It's about moving forward with a study of the project we are in support of. This will create great work opportunities for men and women out here in our community. Please do not delay the process. It has been long enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephen Goodale, who will be followed by Nina Goodale.
Am I going to break it if I move it up? There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. So, good evening. I'm Stephen Goodale from the Boardwalk Association, which is right next to the proposed project site. For years, we've watched a deeply flawed process unfold, one that has shut out real community input in 3 ways. First, the developer cherry-picked who they talked to. After finding Greenbelt Alliance, they stopped talking to established environmental groups like Sierra Club and the Audubon Society, who raised legitimate ecological concerns about the project's impacts. Second, they manufactured the appearance of community support. They promised meetings about alternative plans, but delivered empty meetings about process instead. Meanwhile, they cultivated relationships with select community groups who later shifted to supporting the developer's position and attacking anyone with different views. These favored groups had access to information before the city officially released it. We've confirmed with city representatives that Longfellow worked directly with them in ways they did not with the broader community. Third, what they call public engagement was just for show. We suffered a parade of meaningless meetings. Sorry, guys. Where at best, we sat through online sessions with experts who either worked for the developer or talked about topics not directly connected to the proposed project. At worst, we were herded around rooms to put colored dots on boards, all so they could check a box saying they did community engagement, but never allowing meaningful dialogue. They're running what I think of as a paint-by-numbers democracy kit. You get your colored dots, your pre-written comment cards, while they tell you where to stand, all designed to make it look like they listened while they do exactly what they planned all along. It's like being invited to help drive the bus, only to find out you're really just there to sit in the back and watch them steer. Pardon me. While they tell everyone you helped pick the way. Please restart this broken process.
Mr. Goodell.
Redwood Shores is being asked to absorb the project's negative impacts. We deserve a genuine voice in decisions that will reshape our neighborhood for decades.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nina Goodale, and Nina will be followed by Anthony Nuanez.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and Planning Commission. Similar to about 500 of my Redwood Shores neighbors residing immediately adjacent to the existing Redwood Life campus, I was fortunate to purchase my home under the protective covenants of the Westport Specific Plan. And you may know that PGIM, the majority investment partner behind Redwood Life's redevelopment application, purchased the office park in 2005 under the same Westport Specific Plan. The Westport Specific Plan continues to protect the surrounding residential neighborhoods that pre-existed the current Redwood Life campus. Regarding the application and the questions tonight, despite my intensive engagement and analysis of the project application since its first filing 4 years ago, there still remain more questions than answers. I hope you'll consider just a few. Following the 2 incomplete application rejections by the city's Plan Review Committee, is there still a stable project description for CEQA review? What exactly is meant by a city-led outreach and community engagement process when both the RFP and the applicant's own community engagement process specify that the applicant must oversee all aspects of this process? How exactly have the sensitivity analysis studies informed and shaped the project alternatives? I respectfully request that you carefully consider these critical Westport Specific Plan protections and the myriad other questions arising from the applicant's redevelopment application before approving any project alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anthony Nuanez, who will be followed by Scott Beal.
Thank you. Anthony, before you get into your public comments, really quickly, everyone, we're all working with the same information now. Please don't interrupt public comments so we can keep getting through everybody's comments tonight and continue this discussion. So please, no applause, no cheering. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and planning commissioners. My name is Anthony Nuanez, and I'm a business representative for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. I represent over 11,000 working painters, tapers, glazers, and floor installers, many who live in this community. I too am a resident of Redwood City for over 18 years. I stand in support of the Redwood Life project and believe the local hire that can be created by a project of this size is essential to stimulating our community and providing entryways to a building and construction craft career for our young residents. The sooner the EIR process can begin, the sooner these careers can begin. Please move forward with the Alternative 2 study. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Beal, who will be followed by Sue Nix.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and Planning Commissioners. My name is Scott Beal, and I was fortunate to find my way into the HVACR apprenticeship program a little over 25 years ago. That opportunity set me on a pathway to a stable, rewarding career, one that allowed me to support my family and contribute to the community I call home. Early on, my focus was simply doing my job well and staying employed. But over time, when I started a family and later thought about retirement, I came to truly appreciate the value of a career in the skilled trades, giving back as an instructor and later becoming a business agent. One thing I've learned is that not all community benefits come in the form of dollars. Some come through shared commitments like apprenticeship programs, which provide a direct path to economic stability by allowing workers to learn while they earn. But apprenticeships only work when there are projects that employ apprentices, projects that utilize skilled and trained labor to help mentor and shape our future workforce. That's why I'm here tonight to support Longfellow's project, specifically Alternate 2. They recognize the value of skilled trades, not just by committing to the building trades, but also by investing in the communities we live in. Their approach strengthens our local workforce, ensures high-quality construction, and creates lasting opportunities for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sue Nix, who will be followed by Sigal Alon.
Good evening. My name is Sue Nix. I am a resident of Redwood Shores and have been for 42 years. I first wanted to state the fact that everybody here seems to be under the misconception that this process was community-driven, and I can honestly tell you this is not what happened. I personally and numerous others have attended each meeting, including all of the webinars. Each meeting we were given presentations which proceeded into splitting everyone up into small groups. It was basically a divide and conquer. These meetings were extremely frustrating. In the last meeting, we were told that there's going to be 2 proposals that were presented tonight. This was very concerning to the community because the 2 proposals were not much different. No addressing the real problems with the Redwood Life parcel. The community's been told that we should all support parcel number 2 because that's what Longfellow wants. This includes a generic email from Peter, the main person representing Longfellow. This is, again, very frustrating to the community. We feel that no one is actually listening to the legitimate concerns we have. It's all about the amenities supposedly Longfellow will provide if they get to build what they want. The fact is, as homeowners of that property, most of the things that they're stating is an amenity is really actually the responsibility already for a company that owns a property on a landfill next to a levee. The buzz is around the monies Redwood City will get if this project moves forward, but nobody's taking into consideration all the problems building on the site involves and the existing property values that have already been reduced. We are begging the council to look at a real alternative to this site, listen to the community's concerns, think about this property. It's on a toxic landfill. Who will be responsible when there's leaks or problems? There's already been issues most of the people in this room are unaware of. This is the biggest project in Redwood Shores and one of the biggest in the peninsula. Redwood Shores already has a garbage solid waste facility at one end, and on the other end, a waste treatment plant. We are doing our part. Please work with us and the community who cares about our little island that we live on.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sigal Alon, who will be followed by Mark Nye.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council Member, and Planning Committee. My name is Sigal Alon, and I live right across Marine Parkway from the proposed project site. I wanted to take a minute to get proportion and context for the site and ask you to envision if you're driving down a highway and you see like those small informational signs like for a town name, population, elevation. And imagine a town, 6,000, 7,000 residents. How big is it? Is it 4 square miles, approximately, little downtown? Now you take that town and you shrink it, condense it, shrink and condense it until it fits 84 acres. You're asking to build a town inside a residential neighborhood. And it's not just a residential neighborhood. It's a site that is on a landfill, not just a landfill, a toxic landfill. And this town doesn't have an abundance of profession. It's like all one industry, the life sciences, biotech industry, which includes pathogens, viruses, and whatnot. Now, this is not the end. You're taking this town on a toxic landfill that has potential for viruses, like Wuhan, if you will, and you're building it in a seismic active area. And just on the hills here, we have a fault line. Where is the responsibility towards the people who live right there? Okay. On a personal level,
Ma'am, that's your time. Thank
okay,
you
just
for-
a personal level, if you build this height, we are dependent on the winds in the summer to cool down our units, our homes. If you build these heights, we're going to lose that. These are older units. We don't have air condition. So that's like a
Great.
personal level, not
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
speak of the damage as all the trucks and the construction are going to create.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Mark Nye, who will be followed by Thomas Gomez. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Nix. I'm Sue Nix's son. I'm a resident of Redwood Shores. I don't know what the case was about there being so much concern about speaking. I'm shaking right now. So, like they were saying earlier that people are afraid to speak up. Like, if you have a difference of opinion, speak up. This is the case for it. If you're afraid, like, don't be afraid to speak to your community. I don't know what that consent was, but. I don't trust this project, and it has been because of a number of instances that that Longfellow has made kind of promises that have not really been true. They said that they put together the community engagement process to get community feedback, and that process has basically been like a half hour of lectures, and then this like Lego project of like building a map to see like how cool the project would be if it really does get approved. Not really asking for the feedback. In fact, when somebody said, I do have feedback, and my feedback is, please don't put gigantic buildings on top of the flammable toxic waste site near my house, that version of feedback got shut down, or I guess it was heard because there was a bullet point in the presentation that said concerns bullet point landfill. So I guess that part of it was heard. There's also been a lot of talk about the community benefits, which are like required for this. So I don't know why it's such a like oh, good for you guys. You're giving us community benefits. Like you have to, but also like some of the community benefits have been proposals of housing and daycare on the site, and residents or like community people have had to point out like, no, you can't build daycare centers on top of what is a toxic waste site. That doesn't work. Then, like, how did residents know this, but a professional company who's building did not? There's just weird stuff like that I have
Nix.
come
That's
to
your time.
not trust this process, and I hope that you guys come and find me because I live in the shores and I would love to talk to you guys about
Thank you,
my
Mr.
opinion.
Nix.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much. Great. On that note, before we go on to the next public speaker, I'd like to just take a quick break. We'll adjourn, do a bio break, and then we'll come back and complete public comment if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Everyone. Everybody, hello.
Well, and from the planning standpoint, I'm like, oh, this is really cool.
Exactly, right? Yeah, you're like, I agree with you, Dave.
But, the vast majority.
2-minute warning, everybody. 2-minute warning. Thanks, everybody. Ahead of the curve. Before we get the discussion going again, I did want to just make a few clarifying points. The first being that I know there were some folks who had trouble reading the screens, and all of these materials are available and will be available for you to review at your leisure. So this isn't the one and only time for you to see the data that's been presented here tonight. The second just being that I have tried to explain some of the rules of how to make sure that this discussion goes smoothly and everybody feels safe and respected. And so I just want to remind everyone, to not interrupt before, during, or after with any applause, any boos, any jeering. We do have the ability to remove people from the chambers. I don't want it to get to that point. I want to make sure that everybody feels like they can participate in these meetings. So if we can please refrain from any further interruptions, that'd be greatly appreciated. And with that, sir, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council member, and commissioners. My name is Thomas Gomez, and I'm a lifelong resident of Redwood City, California, as well as a proud IBW Local 617 member. I'm here today in support of moving forward on the Redwood Life proposal. I want to see my city grow, and I want to see it grow correctly. The project's going to create hundreds of jobs, of permanent, well-paying jobs, in addition to hundreds of great construction jobs, which I'm proud of, part of the trade. Last year, not one Science Life building project broke ground in the peninsula, and it's really affecting the local trades here. The developer is also committing to only use signatory contractors who will be hiring apprentices from our local trade programs. I could not afford to live in Redwood City if it wasn't for the proud work I do with my trade. I want to see Redwood City residents get what I've gotten when they can join an apprenticeship and create a better life like I've been able to create for my family. Please endorse Alternative 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final in-person speaker is Carol Ford.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members and planning commissioners. Thank you for having us. My name is Carol Ford, and I'm more than 3-decade member of the Redwood Shores community. I'm also a past president of the Redwood Shores Community Association. About 30 years ago, I led the original opposition to Westport, which is where this project is. It's a toxic dump site. That hasn't been really mentioned in the presentation that we had, but when I read the environmental impact from 1989, this site doesn't hold household refuse. It holds very toxic waste from the early tech companies like Varian, et cetera, with mercury, heavy metals. It should, the environmental impact report stressed that this site should not be penetrated for safety of the bay and the residents. So it was built on. And the process, the bulldozers had to have thick chains added to them so that it would keep the methane gas that came from the site from exploding. We're not just making up that this isn't a good thing. This is really not a good thing to build on this site. So the this is why no one can live there. The developer promises housing, but they can't be on this site. They promise childcare, but it can't be on this site because it's too dangerous. And they neglected to mention that. So they have to have it somewhere else. And I don't know why it isn't ecologically more sound to build on the existing buildings, to make them taller so that you don't have pile driving for 20 years that will further penetrate this clay cap that shouldn't be penetrated at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our last in-person speaker. Before we move on to emailed public comment, I did want to announce that we did receive a few more comment cards. Unfortunately, we did close the public comment list when we called the item earlier. We did state that. It's also up on the screen. So if you weren't able to speak tonight, we do encourage you to email your comments to publiccomment@redwoodcity.org. Thank you. We'll then move on to emailed comments. We have 11. And our first comment is from Richard Hedges. Dear council members, my name is Richard Hedges and I reside across Mariners Island Boulevard from two recently converted Longfellow projects. Prior to the construction, we had several meetings with Longfellow regarding issues for the neighborhood. They listened and solved the problems that we thought might occur from the development. We were very easily able to reach agreement with Longfellow. We have had a very successful relationship and believe they will be a great addition to Redwood City. I've spoken with the council in the past regarding Longfellow, but since I'm not being able to attend the meeting due to being out of town, below are the points I believe should be considered. Longfellow has been working towards this project since 2021, and their proposal still has not begun environmental review. I know you'll not be voting tonight, but Redwood Life Evolve certainly merits the initiation of environmental study as soon as possible. Longfellow has shown themselves to be the ideal development partner Redwood City could ask for. Not only did they offer an unprecedented community benefits package, including a contribution towards affordable housing far beyond what is required, but they've also been listening and working in good faith to satisfy community concerns. The 20% reduction in new square footage and the elimination of 3 life science buildings is extremely generous. This proposal is about more than just Redwood Shores. Redwood Life Evolve is important for Redwood City because it provides the necessary upgrades world-class biotech companies need to stay and grow in Redwood City and continue adding vibrancy and tax dollars to our community. Finally, as the sensitivity analysis shows, this proposal addresses the critical needs of stormwater runoff improvements and increased sea level rise resiliency that are present on the site. Thank you for your consideration. Next comment is from Roger Hausler. Alternative 2 without hotel and a lot more traffic congestion elimination work, please. Next comment is from Vidyut Lingamneni. I've lived in Redwood Shores for over 20 years. I'm not in support of the 2 alternative proposals, which are way over the size wanted by me and most of our residents who have attended the workshops and meetings held over the past couple of years. Longfellow's investment in this campus may appear to represent an incredible opportunity for Redwood City. However, Longfellow has not listened to many of our community concerns and has responded by creating these alternatives that are not significant reductions in the scope of the project. I feel that our views do not matter and the community feels ignored. I would like the City Council to listen to the concerns of the residents. My main concern is the effects of climate change, with a resultant sea level rise and the concurrent sinking of the Foster City, Redwood Shores area described in a recent study. The study found 4 places in the Bay Area that are sinking the fastest: San Rafael, Corte Madera, and Foster City, along with Bay Farm Island in Alameda, which is located next to Oakland International Airport. The land in those areas is subsiding at a rate of more than 0.4 of an inch per. I will support a version that brings the most prosperity in the forms of investments in affordable housing, early childhood education, and job opportunities. There currently exists a jobs housing imbalance in Redwood City and surrounding cities. It will only worsen with what has been proposed for the Redwood Life campus. Thank you for your consideration. Next comment is from Bridget and Earl Aiken. The Stop Redwood Life grassroots movement has surveyed its 1,500 Redwood Shores petition signers, and 68% are willing to accept Alternative 2 as the basis for moving forward with the Redwood Life redevelopment plan. However, many of the yes residents, as well as the no residents, have strong objections to parts of version 2. The primary objections are to the hotel and the height of buildings N1 and N2. There are also concerns about traffic, landfill, sea level rise, and other issues that will be addressed during CEQA after a plan is adopted. We support adopting Alternative 2, subject to the City Council stipulating that the hotel is removed from the plan and buildings N1 and N2 are reduced in height. We appreciate Longfellow making very substantial concessions to get us to this point. Next comment is from Jeff Scheibels. On behalf of the Silicon Valley Lions Club, I'm writing to express our strong support for the Redwood Life Evolve proposal in Redwood Shores. As one of the longest-standing service organizations in our community, the Lions Clubs are deeply committed to serving the needs of Redwood City residents. The inclusion of new, publicly accessible community space in this development is a tremendous opportunity for local organizations like ours, addressing a long-standing need for meeting and event facilities. The need for community space, one of the biggest challenges facing the Silicon Valley Lions Club, as well as other service organizations like Rotary, Kiwanis, and local nonprofits, is securing suitable venues for meetings, celebrations, and fundraisers. Our ability to support the community depends not only on our volunteer efforts, but also on having spaces to gather, plan, and host events that bring people together in service of a greater good. The Redwood Life Evolve proposal includes much-needed community event space that will be available for public use. This is a game changer for organizations like ours. Having a dedicated modern space in Redwood Shores will allow us to host community meetings where we can discuss initiatives, coordinate service projects, and engage with local leaders, hold fundraising events that support vision care programs, scholarships, food drives, and other charitable efforts, provide a hub for service projects where volunteers can organize, strategize, and work together on community improvement initiatives, collaborate with other organizations such as Rotary, local schools, and business groups to amplify our collective impact. The Lions Club, a force for good in Redwood City. For decades, the Lions Club has been dedicated to making a difference in our community. Our mission extends across numerous service areas, including providing free vision screenings and eyeglasses for children and adults in need, organizing food drives to support families facing food insecurity, offering scholarships to local students to support their educational pursuits, supporting disaster relief efforts both locally and globally. Next comment is from Corey Smith. On behalf of the Housing Action Coalition, we're pleased to share our support of the proposed Redwood Life Plan due to the project's significant investment in affordable housing in Redwood City. The Housing Action Coalition, HAC, is a member-funded nonprofit organization whose mission is to advocate for more housing for residents of all income levels across the state of California. To that end, HAC does everything we can to help increase the amount of funding available for affordable housing. While it is not in HAC's mission to support non-housing projects, the number of new homes that will be generated from the Redwood Life Plan presents a significant opportunity to bolster Redwood City's affordable housing supply. The biggest issue cities face when it comes to producing subsidized affordable housing is the lack of financial resources. Longfellow's multi-million-dollar commitment, well beyond the required amount for affordable housing in Redwood City, will make a considerable impact on the community and surrounding areas. Based on our experience and conversations with affordable builders, we believe that funding could result in hundreds of new subsidized affordable homes at no cost to taxpayers. We look forward to working with Longfellow and other HAC members to ensure that the funding becomes available and leveraged as soon as possible so these homes can get built. For that reason, we respectfully request the City Council direct staff to allow the project to move forward and begin its CEQA review. Next comment is from Kristen Mercer. Redwood Life has yet to produce a comprehensive sensitivity analysis or to justify the need to override the existing Westport plan. They have not listened in good faith to resident concerns and have attempted to rig community dialogue. I attended 2 community engagement meetings at Redwood Shores Library, and what I saw at both was a room of 100 residents voicing unanimous opposition to any alternative beyond no project. Residents asked informed questions about the status of the toxic dump, the failed levee, documented methane discharge, and more, none of which the applicant or city has addressed. Any claim that the community supports this proposal would be a lie. Here's how I see it. 40 years ago, the city made a bet with this developer. While neighboring cities, San Mateo, Menlo Park, Palo Alto, were capping their shoreline dumps and leaving them undisturbed, Redwood City gambled that they could build on top of their dump, next to a bay estuary and wildlife reserve. Then the city upped the ante by building housing right at the base of that 30-foot high toxic mound, and they sealed this wager with a Westport plan, a promise that in exchange for building 1 million square feet, the developer would guarantee no toxic leaks from that dump. Now, 40 years later, the developer has lost the bet. They admit the dump has settled more than expected, exposing building foundations, and they don't know the status of the mud cap or toxic leaks. We have state citations for jerry-rigged attempts to vent excess methane without informing neighbors of the toxic exposure. We have dangerous and repeated failures of the levee that the developer promised to maintain to prevent bay water mingling with the underlying dump. The levee that taxpayers had to pay to fix. We have groundwater rising to flood the site whenever a king tide coincides with an atmospheric river. And now, 40 years later, we know so much more. We know the Hayward Fault poses an even greater seismic risk than the nearby San Andreas Fault, and we know the dynamics of bay mud liquefaction. Next comment is from Christine Padilla. I'm the director of Build Up San Mateo County, an initiative dedicated to expanding access to high-quality early care and education. I strongly support the Redwood Life Evolve proposal and highlight the critical need for childcare investment in Redwood City. Longfellow Real Estate Partners has committed $2 million to our capital fund, which will be distributed as grants to childcare operators in Redwood Shores and the greater Redwood City area. These funds will help address our region's childcare shortage by supporting facility improvements and subsidizing low-income infant care. Right now, San Mateo County lacks thousands of child care spaces, and funding is not keeping up with demand. The California Child Care and Development Infrastructure Grant Program saw 22 applications from our county requesting $16 million, yet only 2 were funded, receiving just $1.6 million. Families and businesses feel the impact daily with long wait lists and economic strain. The Redwood Life Evolve project is an opportunity to invest in the long-term well-being of our community, supporting workforce participation, family, stability, and local businesses. I also want to commend Longfellow for listening to community concerns and making meaningful adjustments to the project. I urge the City Council and Planning Commission to support the compromise project alternative and help bring critical child care resources to Redwood City. Next comment is from Alejandro Santillan. I'm writing to share my strong support for the Redwood Life Evolve proposal and, in particular, the generosity of Alternative 2. As both a longtime Redwood City resident and a restaurant general manager, I see this project as a major win for our community, not just in terms of economic growth, but in the way it thoughtfully balances business, environment, and quality of life. Let's start with the business side. I've worked in the restaurant industry here for years, and I can tell you firsthand that corporate clients, whether it's business lunches, happy hours, or big private events, are a huge part of what keeps restaurants, caterers, and other service businesses thriving. The life science industry has been growing in the Bay Area, and projects like this mean more professionals working, dining, and spending money right here in Redwood City. More customers mean more revenue, more jobs, and more stability for our local businesses. That's a big deal, especially after the roller coaster of the past few years. But beyond business, I'm also a dad, and I care about the kind of city my family lives in. One of the things I really appreciate about the Redwood Life Evolve proposal is how it takes environmental concerns seriously. Sea level rise isn't just a buzzword. It's a real issue for Redwood Shores, and this project is stepping up to address it. By improving drainage and investing in levee protection, this development is actively helping to keep our community safe and sustainable for the future. I also want to highlight Alternative 2 because, honestly, it shows that the developers are listening. They've reduced the overall size of the project, pulled back on building heights, and created more open space. That's the kind of compromise that shows real respect for the community. It still brings in the jobs, business, and innovation we need, but in a way that considers the concerns of residents. Thanks for your time, and I hope you'll support this project for all the ways it can help make Redwood City even better. Our final comment is from Jenny Lee. I'm a homeowner in Redwood Shores, and the proposed Redwood Life project is across the street from my residence just off Marine Parkway. I walk, run, and bike in that vicinity multiple times a week. I've also become a bird watcher since relocating to Redwood Shores 5 years ago. Redwood Shores is a special place. Its natural character provides a unique respite to its residents and a significant factor in why we chose to live here. In reviewing the environmental sensitivity analysis, mitigation will be required for impact to wildlife, air quality, ecology, hazardous materials, and noise, among other things. It's also a delicate land, having been built on a landfill and the building of what can only be described as a mini downtown, replete with tall buildings and a hotel, may well be more than this delicate geology can withstand. In addition, the transportation sensitivity analysis shows that there will be an impact on 6 intersections with improvements needed in 4 intersections, meaning more noise, pollution, and disturbance on the residents. Redwood Life proponents cite to the benefits of business development. However, Redwood Shores is not the place for this. Redwood Shores is a serene, natural, and residential area with wildlife, trails, and lagoons. It is not downtown San Mateo, Redwood City, or even San Carlos. If you were a Redwood Shores resident, would you want the construction, pollution, and noise literally steps from your home? Where your children take their first steps and learn to ride a bike? Where your elderly parents take walks and enjoy the fresh air and nature? Would you want this if you lived here? Moreover, there are many vacant commercial biotechnology properties in nearby cities, including in the very same location in Redwood Shores and in nearby San Carlos. Proponents are proposing to tear down existing vacant buildings and replacing them with larger buildings. Really, this is beyond asinine. I stand in opposition of this disastrous project. That concludes public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and thank you again to everybody who made the time, came out here to give your public comment. And to my colleagues for your patience. It was important to me that everybody who was here had a chance to speak on the item. And so I'll now invite my colleagues to provide remarks and feedback on the project. And we'll start with our Planning Commission members and move to council remarks afterwards. So with that, who would like to get us started? Commissioner Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we starting with clarifying questions?
Yeah, clarifying questions or comments.
Okay, well, yeah. So before I have any comments, I just have some clarifying questions for the presenters. First one is kind of a technical question, but the property is currently under a specific plan, and the proposal is to be under a precise plan. What is the difference between a specific plan and a precise plan, if any?
Commissioner Hunter, they are highly similar. A specific plan is regulated very much by government code, and it does require both financial, and infrastructure plans. Those issues are being addressed in the precise plan process that we are considering. Precise plans are just sort of Redwood City's method of effectuating a plan. You can do either or. There's no reason why you can't do one or the other.
Okay, thank you. Next clarifying question is it seems like we are only going to be allowed to have one alternative in addition to the proposal and the no project alternative. Why are we not able to have more than one alternative? Seems like I have seen EIRs before with multiple. I mean, not a lot of alternatives, but more than one.
So, in this particular case, the process includes studying one alternative in addition to the originally proposed project and an equal level of detail within the environmental impact report. And then under CEQA, there is the requirement for the no project alternative, and there can be, and probably will be, additional alternatives that are covered in a lesser level of detail, very similar to what you've seen in other environmental impact reports. One example would be sometimes what's referred to as the environmentally superior alternative, and that would be, as the studies are done, they may identify a shift or change in the project that would be environmentally superior, so they would include that as a potential alternative as well.
Okay. So if the city council wanted to have, say 2 alternatives that were carefully studied, would they be able to do? Would we be able to do that?
Yes, we would have to go back and amend the scope for the project to do that, but yes, it's possible.
Okay, thank you. And then just a general EIR question here is, there hasn't been much public discussion about biosafety levels for the project, but is biosafety level 3 proposed to be allowed in the whole project? And if so, will the impacts, safety impacts of that be studied in the EIR?
So currently within Redwood City, if you're in a zone that allows for research and development labs, including biosafety, there are no specific limits to biosafety levels. So currently on the site, that's an allowed use, and it's allowed, at the different levels. Currently, there are no biosafety level 3 labs on site or in Redwood City, and we did study this when we did the downtown's precise plan amendments, where we allowed biosafety level 1 and 2. In that instance, we did create some very specific regulations in regards to the relationship with mixed uses within the same building, housing and potentially assembly-related uses with sensitive populations. So in that case, there were different rules, but citywide, there are no specific limitations.
Would it be proposed that different biosafety levels would be studied in the EIR?
What will be studied in the EIR are the potential for hazards, and then they will detail out the regulatory environment that's involved, the setting and the context, and then if it is envisioned that there are impacts, environmental impacts created by that, then they would propose potentially mitigations.
Okay, great, thank you. Those are all the clarifying questions I have.
Perfect, thank you, Commissioner. Chairperson Gorek.
Thank you, Mayor Martinez-Ceballos. I also have a couple of clarifying questions. One is for the matter of public record. I'm curious if there are any project alternatives for the CEQA study that include housing as part of the mixed use within this precise plan, and if not, why so?
Housing is not currently contemplated by the project developer. Again, I think you heard tonight it is on a landfill. While it's not completely prohibited by state law, it's our understanding that there are only 1 or 2 projects in the state that have approved housing as part of a plan, but none of them have been built. I think the challenge underlying this is, the future landowner is responsible for ongoing maintenance and operations that make it pretty challenging for homeowners to handle. So they're not proposing it. It's not consistent with our current general plan. And I might also add that child care is outright prohibited by state law on a landfill.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. The second part is that, speaking of the landfill, which has been brought up a couple of times by the speakers, sensitivity analysis has been completed on this particular project alternative and in the project itself. Did it involve any, a deep consideration about either the health, environmental, or hazardous nature of this, or will this be part of the future CEQA study?
Yeah, those aspects are going to, and we've heard a lot of that concern from the community too, is how do you address building on a landfill? How do you address the hazards associated and the impacts? Those will get addressed in the environmental impact report in the next stage, regardless of the alternative that ultimately gets selected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Perfect. Commissioner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a few clarifying questions. I was interested to know, there was talk about the levy Do you know who would need to pay for the levee improvements if this project did not go through? Would it be the city or the developer as part of their current ownership of the site?
I think it depends ultimately on what resources can be brought to bear from outside the city. So, for example, right now, the city has a grant to help design the levee improvements for the shores and the surrounding communities. And it's possible there could be some additional grant funding or resources that are provided. If not, once we have a design and a plan, you might look to our neighboring city, Foster City, as an example for how they funded it. They put a measure on the ballot, I think, and then had folks vote on it, and then there's an assessment that gets distributed based on the frontage and the protection that's provided by the levee. So that's the other way to do it. And then in the interim, until those things are done and there is a funding plan, development projects are required to meet their own needs as they progress.
Okay, thank you. And apologies, I also wanted to make a disclosure. I met with some residents from Redwood Shores and other parts of the city for a walk on the project site yesterday, March 3rd. This group had shared concerns with me, focusing mainly on the possibility of construction disturbing the landfill and the impacts on local wildlife and residential areas due to possible leakage from the landfill. Other concerns that they highlighted included the sea level rise, building subsidence, increased traffic, the high amount of parking, housing and jobs imbalance, prolonged construction timelines, proximity to residents, heights of buildings, limited emergency response nearby, limited access in the event of flooding, risk of disease exposure, and the viability of added biolab space and hotels in the area, inadequate community benefits, and limited community engagement. And they did also share that they liked some parts of the new alternatives, like the added buffer space and the moving of the road to the interior of the property. And then I did have a few other clarifying questions. So who is responsible for any leaks of the landfill?
The property owner is responsible for addressing those issues as they come up. The local enforcement agency is the San Mateo County Environmental Health Department, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board has a role in that as well. But depending on what the related issue is, the leachate is usually the regional board, and the gases and methane is usually the county.
Okay, thank you. And then one more. Would you say, in your opinion, that I know it's hard to put a strict monetary value on the community benefits that have kind of been offered so far, especially because we're kind of early, but would you say, in your opinion, that this is above or average or the level required by the city for a project like this, or above that?
It's a good question. I don't think there is a formula for determining the correct amount of benefits. I think what you've seen is what the developer has proposed as part of the original project. In the case of affordable housing, it's about, for the original project size, about $30 million over what the impact fees would be. And then they've offered the child care funding of $2 million, but there isn't a precise formula that is common, or a menu of options that we would find in some of the city's mixed-use districts, or perhaps as part of the downtown or gatekeeper projects. There's no prescribed formula.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Finch. And Commissioner Cornejo.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a clarifying question. During the presentation, it was said that the project would take about 25 years to just to complete the whole thing. So I'm trying to understand if that would be done in phases, or if you can tell me a little bit more on that comment.
Certainly. So the developer has proposed with the original project to develop in 7 phases, and the first phase being largely along Island Drive in the parking lot areas, so that they can then transition some of the other users of the buildings into the new buildings and then do subsequent phases. I think as the developer articulated that they want a 25-year lifespan for their approval under a development agreement because they're likely to go through many economic cycles where, like right now, there's not as much demand for new space. And so no one's going to, I think we heard also a speaker say there wasn't a project in the last year, a life science project. So you're going to go through ups and downs economically. And so they want the assurance that they can build out the project over that period, but that it's not likely that the construction impacts of noise and trucks and traffic associated with construction would be continuous over that period.
Got it. Thank you. And then one more question is on community engagement. So how was it determined, like who got invited, or if you could walk me through that process, like who were in the focus groups and things of that kind?
So initially, the consultant started the process with engaging with the folks that we knew were interested and involved. We asked them who else should be interested and involved, and then we conducted a few focus groups with different, interest groups like environmental groups and folks that lived in the shores, business community, things like that. And then from there, we did the first community workshop really focused around listening and hearing from everybody that was invited. We reached out through the Redwood Shores community newsletter, the reader boards they have out there, social media, mailers, old school mailers, and a number of other means to invite people and then to hear from them what they identified as the concerns. And, those were elaborated tonight and reiterated by the public. I think the overall concern is that none of those things are completely resolved at this point. How do we deal with building on a landfill keeps coming up as an example. And regardless of the alternative that's picked, that issue gets addressed in the next phase.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner. And please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. The first one is all of the conversation we've had a little bit about a hotel. If there is a hotel on the site, I'm assuming that there would be because I'm seeing that showing up in alternative 1 and 2. During CEQA, will there be a night lighting study because of bird migration? And I'm assuming that there will be. Mm-hmm. If there were not to be a hotel on the site, because of the height of the buildings, will there still likely be a bird migration study for night lighting?
We are definitely going to look at the night lighting. There are a number of mechanisms that can be used to address that. One of the mechanisms that we've identified that is used actually in Boston is that the windows in the life science buildings have mechanical systems that actually roll down the blinds at night. Hotels a little different. You probably don't want to shut somebody in, but there's the ability to use different types of glass, orientation of glass and windows, so that the light doesn't penetrate. So yes, we'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my only other, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but the concerns about level 1, level 2, level 3. It was my understanding that San Carlos allows level 3, and we're right next door. So if there was an issue and prevailing winds are coming this direction, I don't know. I think it's going to be, I think it wouldn't matter where we lived at that point. Do you foresee any kind of guideline coming into play here for Redwood City as far as?
So when we did the downtown precise plan, we studied this issue quite extensively. And again, it's a different setting and context in the downtown than it is in other parts of the city due to the potential vertical mixed use operations. That said, we also offered to study this further as part of the Planning Commission's work plan. The Planning Commission recommended that it wasn't necessary to further study the safety levels, and the City Council considered that as well in the work plan and also did not elect to change that. The developer has said they would abide by the standards the city applies universally across the city. And so we have our standards in place now. If the direction is to further study those standards, we can do that. But in this particular case, we'll look at very specific impacts of operations on the site.
Thank you, Commissioner Koch. Appreciate you continuing the conversation. Thanks. Chair Sinagora, did you want to go into comments? Perfect.
Sorry. Well, too many microphones in one room. I do apologize. I do have one more question, mainly regarding the 25-year span. I think this is the first time we're considering, a particular, plan for such a long time. Just so I know how it actually is going to work out in practice. So this 25-year span is to build within the envelope of the specific plan which we're proposing a CEQA study for. Is that correct? So the 25 years, usually when we review a project, this is really early on, we do a CEQA study, and it gives a kind of a study of a particular proposal at hand, right? And then it goes through entitlement and then building permits and gets built. In this case, I guess it's a fairly large area and it requires a specific plan.
Yes, I think we feel that, precise plan, specific plan is necessary to look at the phasing of the project, understand also when the benefits would come online. And there are impacts associated likely with the phasing. I mean, if we're going to potentially fill the site, particularly along the levee edge there to do the sea level rise protection, that's going to cause certain impacts on how do you adjust that to the phase that isn't built yet. And is there going to be a retaining wall? Is there going to be some transition? So all of those things need to be addressed and carefully looked at as part of environmental review, the conditions of approval, the precise plan standards, and then I think we would envision that while the initial entitlement may include a first phase, that there would be subsequent phases that would require a planned community permit that would get reviewed probably by the Planning Commission, and depends on how we craft the precise plan. And you would look at the next phase, and as part of that, the architecture would also be looked at.
Got it. That's what I was aiming at, because usually they have 2 years to commence that part, so 25 years much longer than 2 years. I was curious how that would be phased in, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And does anyone on planning want to jump into comments? Commissioner Hunter, thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think the language is, are any alternatives presented suitable for evaluation in the EIR? And I think that alternative 2 is suitable for evaluation in the EIR, and I support including that as a alternative to be studied. I was at first a little concerned that a 20% reduction in size wasn't significant enough to present a real alternative. But I applaud Longfellow for making positive design changes in addition to reducing the size, and I think it is a real alternative. The best improvement in my mind is that the alternative 2 almost doubles the setbacks between the buildings and the residences, and between the buildings and the slough. I also applaud moving the roadway, Longfellow Lane, from the perimeter to the interior of the site. And I note that in response to community concerns about the heights of N1 and N2, which are the ones closest to Marine Parkway, they have stepped back the height of at least one of those from 6 stories to 5, on the part that's facing the road. So I think those are significant design changes in addition to the reduction in size. I would want to request that somehow the biosafety levels are studied in this very large project, which is in fact right next to residential neighborhoods. As far as Vice Chair Koch says, I may be wrong, but I think that San Carlos actually does not allow level 3, but I could be wrong about that. But I know that the level 3 is sort of where the conflict and the controversy is in biotech projects. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Who's next? Commissioner Finch. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I like the developer's willingness to consider updates based on the community feedback. I agree that I think moving it was great to hear that the community had asked for them to kind of move the bigger buildings, especially further back from the residences, and getting that incorporated, as well as having the Longfellow Lane moved within the project. I think it was great to see that in the alternatives based on the feedback. And yeah, I would definitely like to see the EIR, fully cover the studying of the effects of the landfill and building on it, and any possible concerns that there are with that. I think one concern that was brought up a lot in the feedback is the concern about traffic. And I know that we will be doing a TDM. I guess one question was, do we know what TDM measures might be considered, or that's up in the air at this point? Maybe a question for community. Sorry.
I apologize. We were
don't worry.
talking about something else.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Do we know what TDM measures might be considered, or is that still up in the air at this point?
I think we're going to consider the full range of TDM measures, and then the other thing that we're evaluating citywide is the Transportation Management Association, which has potentially some strong potential and synergies with our neighboring cities in the Redwood Shores area.
Okay, thank you. I think I know that the number of parking spaces has been reduced, so that was, I think, a positive for, again, going with community concerns around traffic. I think another option to consider could be, free transit passes for people who take I know there's a public bus there, or the shuttles may already be free. I'm not 100%, but even a free transit pass for Caltrain, if the shuttle is free, Caltrain is still fairly expensive. So, getting a free transit pass for that would be very helpful, and I think I think there was some skepticism in the community that the transit alternatives would reduce traffic. So I think free transit passes would help with that. In addition, possibly offering some kind of cash out for employees who choose not to use a parking space. Obviously, parking spaces are not free to construct, so I think offering the ability to cash out the value of the parking spot for employees there if they choose not to use it and instead use the transit could be great at encouraging people to use the transit more, or rewarding the people who do, and also saving the developer some money in terms of building the parking spaces. Maybe another alternative for that could be charging for the parking that is on site. And the lower parking construction costs could be used to subsidize some of those alternative transit methods. And I think that is most of my comments. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Who is next? A very polite group we have. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to sort of jump in with what Commissioner Finch was saying, especially about a very robust TDM plan for a project this size. I think that's obviously going to be absolutely necessary. I do know for some of the other projects that we've had come through, let's see, what was it? It was the transit passes. They were more the responsibility of the individual employers at the site and not so much the developer. But they also said that sometimes that can be negotiated between the developer, being the landlord, and whoever comes in. But I do agree. I think that's going to be really important. And I also would think that where we are now as far as so many cyclists in Redwood City. I would imagine that we're going to be doing a really good job of having some bike lanes going into the area, and they're going to be incorporating bike lockers and all of those kinds of things too, to do whatever we can to encourage people, even if it's back and forth to Caltrain or just to get people there without having to drive. I think that's going to be really important.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for your comments. Chair Sinagora, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo the comments by the other commissioners. I wholeheartedly agree with their assessment. And as tonight we're choosing the potential alternatives for the CEQA study in front of us, and we have heard a lot of information both about Alternative 1 and Alternative 2. First, I wanted to commend the staff for the thorough engagement with 9 separate meetings, as well as virtual feedback gathering, which, by my count, that I've been on Planning Commission, probably has been the most thorough community engagement. Some things notwithstanding. The other part I wanted to say is that I like both proposed alternatives, especially in terms of increasing the open space. I just wanted to put out there that 35 acres, if it was standalone, would be the largest park in Redwood City by land area and landscaped, and be maintained by, I guess, a project applicant, which I think would be great because it increases the permeability also of the area. Right now it's 90% impervious parking lot, which actually is quite a big risk in terms of flooding potential in case of king tides and atmospheric rivers. That's one of the commenters brought out. It's bringing that down to 65%. So it's close to a half being open area, which I think is a great benefit for the city. I also commend the applicant for particularly proposing this alternative number two, which responded to resident concerns and reduced massing from facing the neighborhood. The setbacks of 250 feet to 300 is, in my accounting, close to a football field. Football field is 360 feet, just to give an impression in terms of what the distance is. And if it includes dense trees and forest as a screen, I think it'll be a good way forward in terms of mitigating the impact on the neighboring residential plots. Having this open area with all these trees, I think it's imperative to make sure that there is public access to this greenway, such that both the residents of Redwood Shores and the city as a whole have ability to access and enjoy this potential new amenity. The last comment I wanted to say about the BSL labs, and I do agree that this is something that's close to heart of many of the commissioners on here, is my personal opinion. I'm not a biologist, but they work in the biotech field, is that many of these things are governed at state and federal level, and I'm not necessarily sure whether the local intrusion in extra layers of regulation is necessarily necessary, but it is something that the staff could consider. So given the options ahead of us, I would like to recommend including alternative number 2 along with the project proposal and no project proposal as part of the EAR CEQA study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's appreciated. And last but not least, Commissioner Cornejo.
Thank you. To me, it's clear that there's been a lot of work done with the public, with residents, with different stakeholders. I think that this project, it's been shown by cutting the 20% or offering the second alternative. I think it's time to move the process forward and really see what that next phase will look like. Which I'm in support of just moving along the process.
Thank you, Commissioner Cornejo. With that is our Planning Commission. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the City Council. Any clarifying questions? Any comments? Councilmember Chu, thank you.
Sorry, just for the purposes of comparing the original project with whatever alternative that is or is not selected tonight, would it be trivial to move the road? Would it be trivial to move the road? It's Longfellow Way. No. Is that the right name of the road? Yeah. Would it be trivial in the original project plan to move the road behind the buildings, or is that a major change to the original plan? It's more of an apples to apples that way.
Yeah, I would say that overall we think that's a great move, and that's something we would look at even in the original plan and density.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chu. Vice Mayor Aiken. Thank you.
I'm not going to speak yet, but I'm going to combine my clarifying questions and my comments. But I'll wait for others.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anyone on this side of the table? Councilmember G, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number one, I want to say thank you to Jeff and the entire consultant team. I know the community engagement process was not easy, but you guys were there. The whole team was there, and you worked through it. There's, as one of my colleagues here said, there's a divergence of opinions out there in Redwood Shores on this project, and yes, there are. It is a very, very large project. I want to just focus on the clarifying questions, and I'm pretty consistent with my questioning, whether it's here at the city or on my transit boards that I sit on. So when we talk about traffic and parking, are we still using the same old ITS standards that were there before COVID?
So when we talk about traffic in the environmental impact report, it's based on vehicle miles traveled. And as the consultant previewed that, this is actually helping reduce vehicle miles traveled. Then from a city perspective, we do look at level of service, which is the measure of congestion. And we do have some standards in the general plan that we're trying to maintain level of service D, which does have some congestion in it, and that we try to look towards improvements that help reduce that congestion as part of the project approvals.
I appreciate that, Jeff, but I'm still struggling with this work from remote stuff and how we calculate that, with whether it be LOS or VMT or anything like that. At the Caltrain board, we continuously insist that weekend service is Saturday and Sunday, but when I look at ridership numbers, that is not true and hasn't been true for the last 4 or 5 years, that weekends, depending on your employer, could be Friday through Sunday or Saturday through Monday or some other combination, yet we still seem to be applying the same sort of historic LOS, VMT, all that stuff. So I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around where we are today post-pandemic with regard to car usage, parking, hours of service, and things like that.
That's a great question. Eric Yerkovich with Ramey Associates. We did in our sensitivity analysis adjust for an increased work from home rate that has been reduced down since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which many of us were working from home full time or part time in some cases. That's actually been reduced down overall across all industry sectors, including the life sciences, as people are going back into the office. However, hybrid and remote schedules have still maintained. So we do, in our sensitivity analysis, tested, I think, a higher proportion of work from home than we would have traditionally done under the ITS models of the past years.
That's interesting to know. So in one of the slides I think you presented, I think it was slide, I lost track of it, but when you evaluated the sensitivity analysis for 2050, it kind of showed regional impacts as well without the project and regional impacts with the project. How far down in the detail does that sensitivity analysis go? Because from a visual standpoint, the color bars weren't that much different with the project, but there's got to be a layer beneath it that kind of gets into the numbers. Is that available now, or is that going to be further studied in the next phase?
There are additional levels of detail included in the sensitivity analysis that you and members of the community can find attached to the packet tonight, but also on the Plan Redwood Life project website. I would say that, interestingly, the region, as it projects additional growth generally, is also projecting additional VMT per job and per capita. So when you look at the long range evaluations done by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Association of Bay Area Governments, you can see that increase generally across the board, and that's increased both since COVID-19 pandemic, but is anticipated to increase into the future.
Thank you. And then one final clarifying question. This is maybe for the team. We've talked sort of we talk in code sometimes with TDM versus TMA. Those are very different things. And I believe this project has been talking about a seeding or partnering and a TMA, not just a TDM. And so can someone take the time to explain the differences between a TDM and a TMA? Because some of the comments made by the planning commissioners suggest some of those benefits are potentially can come from a TMA if there's enough buy-in by employers and developers, such as free passes and other things like that. But there are stark differences between a potential TMA and a traditional TDM.
I'm going to take a stab at it. So I think of it as a TDM is very either tenant or a property-driven plan to reduce traffic. And then a TMA is, think of it as like a homeowners association or a business association that provides an array of services and partners with a number of different employers to help deliver it. So if one employer has a shuttle and the other employer has a shuttle, in theory you could go by both of those sites and get better service quality, and that would entice people to potentially use transit more. So I think the TMA offers more opportunities to combine resources, share resources, have a broader array of potential services that would entice people not to drive alone.
That's a pretty good explanation, Jeff, so thank you for that. And I think there may have been initial conversations with our adjacent cities about potentially TIMs. So can you talk about how those initial conversations, I know nothing's set, but have those initial conversations gone?
I haven't been privy to all of them in recent times, but my understanding is they're supportive of the concept because they're faced with similar challenges as they develop and redevelop properties in both Belmont and San Carlos. So they've been willing partners to consider this. Beyond that, I think we need to pull in our engineering and transportation staff to give you a more recent update.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember G. Would like to go next, Councilmember Sirkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to all the staff and all the community members who participated in this process tonight. I just have a few questions also along the transportation topic. It was mentioned in the presentation that the level of service degradation or the increase in congestion, has that been calculated without mitigation measures in place, right? So it's just current conditions.
The initial analysis that we did for the sensitivity analysis does not include those mitigation measures. Those were developed as a way to offset some of those adverse impacts that were identified at those sites. The sensitivity analysis does include transportation demand management measures to help reduce travel to and from the site overall, consistent with what's currently on the books for the city.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding correctly, that kind of bar graph that Councilmember G referred to would improve. Actually, can we pull it up in the presentation just so I can refer to it, please? The slide with all the bar graphs, all the whatever you call them.
Yeah. I think it was around slide 21, maybe. Ish.
Slide 21 is the best guess.
28 or 29.
Well, while you're pulling that up, so it sounds like those conditions could improve with the implementation of that of those TDM measures. like the improvements to 4 out of the 6 intersections. And then there's been talk about shuttles as well, and I think one thing I haven't heard mentioned yet is the commute.org shuttle that is sponsored, I believe, in full by Redwood Life. And I'm on the commute.org board, so and oh, okay, thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you for adding that. If you have anything else to add, please submit something through public comment, but this way we can wrap up the discussion. Thank you, Councilmember.
And so there is the potential for that shuttle service to be expanded as well as part of the kind of future mitigation measures. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And then I'm really glad Councilmember G asked about the TMA. I was actually going to ask about that too. But my kind of follow-up question is, when is that? I know it's supposed to come back to council soon or sometime soon. Do we happen to know, Jeff, when that's coming back?
So that would actually be the engineering and transportation staff who would bring that forward. So, and I don't have it scheduled just yet.
No worries. That's right. I think that was mentioned. But it's in the works, and it sounds like the project applicant is, or this project is considered as part of that the development of that TMA. So there's lots of things in the works beyond what we saw here in the analyses. And then I wanted to turn it back to staff in case you happen to get the chance to bring up that that slide. In case you want to see it all again, here we go. Well, anyway, maybe in the, oh, there it is. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so just to conclude my comments here, these bars could actually improve in the cumulative 2050 and maybe the cumulative project 2050 with the implementation of those TDM measures, and not to mention the TMA and so on.
That's correct. As we refine the project and the project alternatives, as well as develop the standards and requirements of the precise plan and the environmental impact report, we could anticipate that some of this would improve in terms of the LOS standard based on additional TDM measures, TMA implementation, and others.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So this is more of like a snapshot in time than
That's correct.
The final product. Okay, fantastic. Those are my clarification questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sturkin. And I see Councilmember Howard has her hand raised. Thank you for joining us virtually.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad I could be with you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Oh, thank you. The last time we met, I believe it was a council study session when we got a presentation. And I want to thank the staff tonight, as well as the developer. I really appreciate the effort that's gone into making adjustments based on the input that you received the last time we met. It was quite a while ago. I don't remember the date exactly, but it was quite a while ago. But I do remember specifically asking the developer to address certain things that I felt were really, really important. I wanted to be sure, based on the input we received from Redwood Shores, I said, can we ensure that we pay attention to the concerns that were raised? And at the time, what I said was, one, pay attention to the concerns of the neighbors bordering the proposed project, setbacks. Thank you very much. You listened. I can clearly see an alternative 2 as well as alternative 1, but I clearly see you did address the setback question, and I feel it's a generous adjustment that's been made. Number 2, be sensitive to visual concerns from the height of the buildings as well as the number of buildings. So I did have a couple of questions regarding that. But number 3, I asked you to pay attention to the sea level rise concerns and the landfill and its clay cap. So I guess you did pay attention to the setbacks. is regarding the height. How many of your buildings are 100 feet? And try to give me a visual on what you think that is. Is it it's in the middle of the campus away from the neighborhoods, so that it's been concentrated in an area that has less of a visual impact in a negative way? I'll start with that one. Would that be Mr. Fitch?
Hi, thanks. Thank you for the question. We're going to pull up the slide so you can see a visual on it quickly. Yeah, okay, thanks. This map shows the proposed Longfellow development project that you originally discussed back in the summer of 2023. The darkest blue colors are the tallest buildings. Those range from about 90 to 100 feet in height. Those middle kind of blue colors are about 75 to 90 feet in height and are about 5 stories. And the lighter blue are generally lower than 60 feet. You can see buildings N1 and N2 are some of the taller buildings close to the property line, as well as some in the middle of the site. And if you don't mind going ahead 2 slides, you can go 2. This is project alternative number 2 that we presented earlier. It uses the same color coding as the proposed project by Longfellow. Again, the darker blues are the taller buildings. They range from about 90 to 100 feet in height and 6 stories. You can see that N1 and N2 remain in that kind of higher category, but you can see the ones in the middle of the site. Those have been dropped about a floor in height or so. Those actually are on the highest points on the site. So the intent there is by dropping those, it helps to reduce the visual impact of the site because, again, that's one of the high points of the site. You can also see how the 2 buildings, building N7 and 12, were removed on the edges of the project area, and that the heights for the parking garages G2 and G3 along the project boundary have also been reduced in height.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a terrible copying machine, and it didn't come out with this lovely. What you're showing me here did not come out on my copier, so I'm glad I'm asking you to clarify for me. Really appreciate it. I can see the effort that's put in to try to reduce height, especially around the perimeter where it's populated. I do appreciate that. Also, I was going to say, I believe the parking garages are close to the neighborhoods. They are pulled back, but I was hoping that you might look at the San Jose Airport parking structures. They did such a fabulous job making them works of art with the outdoor screening that they used on those parking structures. And you can see it from the 101, and it's quite attractive. And I was wondering if that was something that you could consider. I can't tell you totally how to design your building. I'm just saying how impressed I was that a building parking structure could be so attractive and could be considered a work of art. So you might take a look at that if you haven't already and see if that's something you might consider. The landfill and its clay cap and the sea level rise. Am I right in thinking that when we go to the EIR process, if we put this in as concerns, this will get addressed through the EIR process?
That is the intent, is that the environmental impact review process will address the landfill, the cap, and the sea level rise issues in greater detail. In detail.
Well, I mean, it's so important to the people of Redwood Shores, and I think that's probably the only way, because we're not equipped to do those studies. But I'm hoping that we emphasize how important it is, so it's given great emphasis when we do that study.
Understood.
I understand that, and I was aware that some people were afraid to give their point of view, whether they're for or against, only because of the backlash received by some people. So I understand that you may have done a different kind of survey let's just call it an anonymous survey, a community survey. I was hoping, are you able to share with us any of the results of that survey? Did you have a positive result by doing it in that fashion?
Thanks for the question. We did do, along with the community workshop, council member, we also released an online survey that went live, I believe, the next morning after the community meeting, and is actually still available for folks who are interested in taking it. Again, it's on our website at planredwoodlife.com. The questions mirrored those of the community workshop in general. Overall, we found that the responses in the online survey, which we will summarize at the conclusion of the survey being opened, were generally more positive towards the design responses illustrated in alternatives 1 and 2. In general, they were more than half supportive of those design responses, everything from the setbacks to the building heights in general. They did also flag a couple of the concerns raised at the community meetings, including the hotel and some of the building heights near the entrance of the project, like as were defined and discussed tonight by members of the community who participated this evening as well.
Thank you again. Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it. I did have a question about the hotel. How important is this hotel to your project? It's 104 rooms. I traveled to the East Coast not too long ago, and I asked a builder about that there was a campus and it was bio-development, bio-studies, and they said they use the hotel and it saves their employees and their families time, energy, travel expenses, if they're able to have something on site that they primarily used for employees, whether they're visiting or they actually work on site. I wanted to know, how important is this hotel to your project? Because we do have some very good hotels and they're not all filled. So I was curious, is the use more than some people realize?
Hi, Councilmember. Great question. This is Peter with Longfellow. And the whole purpose of the hotel is to do exactly like you mentioned. It's to support the ecosystem and the innovation and the research on campus. A lot of our tenants have locations not only in other major hubs like Boston and San Diego and North Carolina, but also internationally in the UK and in Asia. And so there's a lot of travel between sites. And so the whole intent is exactly that, to serve the tenants. And it actually helps with the VMT and the traffic reduction by once a visitor is on site, they stay on site and they eat at the restaurants and they walk versus getting in the car and driving. And so it's not a resort hotel, right? It's 104 rooms is quite small for a hotel. It's exactly that, to serve the community. You know, we have heard, to serve the community on campus, the research and innovation. We have heard concerns from the community, and recently that there's additional questioning as to why there is a hotel. That's the reason. Again, we are certainly open to continue to explore, but that is the purpose for the hotel.
And I'm glad to hear that. It's what I heard on the East Coast, and it makes perfect sense. You don't need people driving in and out of Redwood Shores to go catch a plane or whatever. I figured that's what it was for, but I'm glad you clarified that, because I think that's important. It's an amenity that's important to your company, and it's probably a good retention tool also. If people who are visiting from out of state could have their families stay there and visit our area, I think that would be a bonus. So thank you for the answer. My last comment is the biosafety studies. I remember we did have a long discussion about that at our council meeting. And my understanding was that, I think I'm right on this, that San Carlos, it does not propose doing level 3. They do not permit level 3, much less level 4. But I understand Longfellow said they weren't proposing a level 3. However, I'd like to respect the comment that was made by, I think, one of the planning commissioners, in that I'd hate to go through a long, drawn-out process if, in fact, Longfellow changed their mind. So I'm wondering if what we should consider is, in regards to biosafety studies, if someone wanted a level 3 or 4, we should consider having a variance required, so we could study that particular issue. It might be helpful. It might save a lot of time. We don't have to turn around and study the whole thing. But I know that there are concerns when you get into level 3, different walls, and there are different requirements and safety concerns. So I say for any project now or in the future, maybe we consider having a variance that needs to be applied for if you're considering doing something that is above and beyond what everyone else has been doing. And so those are my comments, and I would like to move this process forward. And I think alternative 2 with the project proposed and no project alternative, I'd be supportive of that tonight. And thank you again to the staff and to the people who came tonight. I really appreciate you stuck with this and you raised all these concerns so that we could have a better project in the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Howard. Vice Mayor. Oh, sorry about that. Councilmember Padilla.
I will keep my comments short and sweet. I appreciate all the work that has been going on for years, clearly, and the community engagement. I've actually really been impressed by the robust community engagement efforts. Everyone knows I am a big fan of engaging the community, and I was really impressed by the various ways that the applicant has engaged the Redwood Shores community and our community at large. I feel like a lot of the questions that people have, we have to progress to address some of the big issues, right? Sea level rise is important, but it seems like that's the natural progression, is that we need to take this step forward so we can. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and sorry about that again. Vice Mayor. Oh,
Sorry.
did it again.
Yeah, I
Councilmember, please.
Would you go first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for a terrific presentation, and I know this has been a long road and has been a very thorough process for everyone involved. Thank you also for everyone who came and commented. I did have a couple follow-up questions, and I'll make comments. What was in buildings N7 and N12? What was in those? Was that labs? Was that, restaurants?
They were proposed as life science buildings.
Okay, labs. Okay. And do we know about how many benches was in each of those?
How many?
Benches?
I'm sorry.
Benches?
Benches?
Benches.
Oh, labs?
Yeah, well, each it's like the equivalent of
No, we don't have that level of detail.
Okay, all right, great. And then the second question was in looking, and I realize that this is part of the EIR, but is there a threshold at which transit is more viable? I know that if you dip below certain densities, that transit isn't really viable, or there's just not enough to sort of justify transit. Is there any of the alternatives that does not meet that threshold, if there is such a threshold?
I don't know that there is a specific threshold, but I think the concept's valid that if you didn't have enough wherewithal of employees there, it would be very hard to make that work. I think any of these alternatives and the project itself would definitely be within threshold. The current project's within threshold.
Councilmember, on your first question about the lab benches, so based off of the average density we see, which is the amount of typical lab workers and technicians inside of the building based off the square footage, between those two buildings would be 800 to 1,000 benches.
Okay, 800 to 1,000. Okay, thank you. All right, so just a few comments. First of all, about the hotel, it was really interesting. I had a visit at the police department recently, and they actually have a sleeping trailer, and it's been a huge boon to safety. And so I do know that when people run experiments, they often have to run them all night. You have to babysit the cells. If you've got mouse labs, you've got to... Anyway, science tends to be a very 16 to 20 hour a day thing. So I think from a safety perspective and from a smoothing traffic perspective, I can see the hotel being very helpful there. The other thing too is, I work at a university. Having your own hotel that's not $750 a night is often very helpful when you're recruiting postdocs and people like that. You can kind of control the availability of those rooms, and so I certainly can understand why that would be helpful. And then also, of course, during the construction phase, if the project is to move forward. I appreciate option 2. However, I am interested in seeing jobs in Redwood City. And, the nice thing about bench science is hopefully you're not doing that from home. I am also interested in considering option 1. I'm open to either one of them. But I did like that about option 1, that it had more jobs for our local residents. These are good jobs, and you have to be in the office to do them. And then finally, about the level 3 labs, my understanding is that level 3 is permissible under our current zoning. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. So, and just a comment. So UCSF, Stanford, and UC Berkeley all have level 3 labs, and these are incredibly regulated at the federal level. And we've gone decades without. Obviously, sometimes there's a little event in the lab. Somebody has to do an eye wash station or something, but there are universities that have these and have sort of been able to do that without incident for decades. So. I think, if it's consistent with our zoning, that's fine. So I would be supportive of option 2, but I sort of prefer alternative 1. But I think either one would be a reasonable alternative. And then, the transportation management, I did agree with all of Commissioner Finch's comments, particularly, the idea of unbundling parking, pricing parking, considering not building the garage unless it's absolutely necessary. So as you phase it, not building the garage until the first garage is packed, or at least quite full most of the time. And then offering people who don't drive. I mean, if you offer people a $55,000 incentive to drive, they're more likely to choose that option. So offering people who don't drive something of similar value, and pricing parking can be a good way to come up with the revenue for that, because that was one of the main concerns of the community, was just the amount of traffic. And so when we unbundle parking, when we price parking, we have less parking. That means less driving. And then having things like bike lockers, showers, and clothes lockers would be important. And then finally, on the transportation plan, studying, and I know this isn't part of the project, but it's part of the transportation plan, studying non-driving routes, so basically bike routes, from Redwood City Caltrain, San Carlos Caltrain, and Belmont Caltrain, and the ferry, because those are, I was looking on a map. If you don't drive, that's where you're going to be coming from. So those are the 4 nodes where I would imagine most non-drivers are going to be going there, and just making sure that that's a pleasant experience. But overall, I would be supportive of either 1 or 2.
Thank you, Councilmember Chu. Vice Mayor Aiken.
Thank you. I'm going to ping pong between questions and comments. So one of the speakers talked about insurance. They talked about something about the risk and sea level rise. Can you just talk a little bit about it? Is this type of thing insurable? Is that done? Specifically, the comment was, will taxpayers be liable if unexpected things happen, having to do with sea level rise and so forth? So if you could just high level talk about that a little bit.
So what I understand to date is that the property owner is responsible for complying with all the regulatory requirements. As I mentioned, the the county is the local enforcement agency regarding the methane in the landfill, and there's the regional board that deals with the leachate. And as they go through the process, they'll have to demonstrate to those agencies that the new construction will not cause adverse impacts and release any substances. And so they're ultimately responsible. And then those regulatory agencies also have the ability to take action to ensure that the property owner complies. So I think that is one level of, if you will, insurance. I'm not familiar with a jurisdiction requiring a policy type insurance like, for your homeowners, but it's something we can take a closer look at and see what has been done either regionally or, nationally.
Thank you. That might warrant a little bit of looking into, because sea level rise is quote unquote new. They just verified maybe a year ago that ground level rise they proved it scientifically. It was suspected maybe for 4 or 5 years, and then it was proven scientifically. So maybe some kind of insurance, I don't know. Maybe it's never been done and there are really good reasons why. Maybe it has been done. I don't know. Just something I'm a little intrigued and interested in. On the timeline, I understand why 25 years, and I'm very appreciative of the phases, that it doesn't mean 25 years of construction. It means, 1 or 2 years of construction and then 5 years of no construction, and then maybe another 1 or 2 years of construction. Is that kind of maybe how it would go?
That's a possibility.
Okay. And so my question about that, though, then is the community benefits. Do we get all $80 million or $100 million or whatever it is on day one? Or do we get some of it on day one and some of it on year 25?
I'm gonna turn that one over to the developer to answer as to what they might want to do, but I would say that as part of this process, we will be negotiating a development agreement, and in that process, the city could say we need some of these benefits earlier, and so there's going to be some back and forth on that. But I'll let the developer take that hot potato.
That was a great response, Jeff. Generally, the community benefits are tied to the pro rata share of development being done, right? It just financially isn't feasible to build one building and put $80 million into affordable housing at one time, right? You can never finance the building. So it's a pro rata share generally, but per Jeff's comment on the community benefit negotiation, things like the levies, potentially, right, you want to do all of that or a lot of that at one time, right, versus just a pro rata share. So that's where the negotiation comes into what's critical to get done in the earlier phases and what comes later.
Thank you. There was another question, and I just want to, let me preface it by saying the planning chairman, I really agreed with your comments about the idea that this is fewer buildings, a less parking lot, that the plat of this new plan, the map of this new plan appears to me, and I agree, 35 acres of parks or open space and less parking lot. I like that. I think the community will like that. So I agree with those comments, and thank you for clarifying them. On these buildings, one of the questions from the public comment was, why not just build on top of the buildings that are already there? Because my understanding is you're tearing them down and then building new ones. But why wouldn't you just build on top of a building that's already there? And
In short, it's likely not structurally viable.
Okay.
You need a proper foundation designed to proper seismic standards to support the new building.
So basically structural engineering.
Right.
Okay. Not feasible. Redwood City did a 94-page shoreline analysis. We had a whole study group on it about 4 or 5 months ago. I want to make sure that and we're going to be doing many more shoreline analyses. Redwood City has 20 miles, between 10 and 20 miles of shoreline on the bay. And we are going to be continuously studying and updating our studies. I want to make sure that the developer knows this and that the developer is in constant conversation with Redwood City about these studies and about this work. Is that doable? Is that already?
It is. We've had many conversations with One Shoreline in addition to obviously the engineering department, and we'll continue to stay close. That'll be part of the environmental review, and then part of the community benefit negotiation is identifying in concert with the overall design of whatever levee improvements that there are, what does the project do specifically.
Right, and thank you for mentioning One Shoreline. You're in contact with them as well?
We are.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the reduction in parking. I like all the ideas my colleagues have mentioned. I'm intrigued by the idea, perhaps, of, reducing parking, separating the parking, so that it's not, you're just not automatically guaranteed a parking spot. Maybe that's something you negotiate with your salary, and so someone who takes public transit gets a benefit from that. I don't know, paid parking, I don't know. But I think there's some really good ideas there. I really like the Transportation Management Association. I'm thrilled to hear that you have buy-in from Belmont and San Carlos, potentially. And I hope that you would consider being a driver of this, since you'll be a large employer. So I really support that. I really appreciate the conversation about the hotel. A lot of it makes a lot of sense. Everything, I won't repeat what my colleague said, but I agree with it. And it sounds like the hotel would be helpful, and in reducing car usage potentially, and so forth. I'm okay with level 3. As my colleague said, it's highly regulated on the federal level, on the state level. Biotech, you don't hear about incidents. It's highly regulated. I don't think it's not really regulated at the local level, so I'm confident with that. I support option 2. I also I would like to put my hats off to what I would call the nimbleness of the applicant in pivoting and listening to the community. And I would encourage you during the EIR process, the CEQA process, to continue being nimble, continue listening. And I guess I would also assure the community that the EIR process, the CEQA process, will daylight concerns, issues. It will clarify a lot of things. So this is not the last look, just choosing option 2 or the. So I think I may be done. Let me look here. I congratulate the outreach. It looks like it was good, and we wanted it to be robust, and it looks like it was. I'm just looking at my notes. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mayor. And just before I continue here, did you want to ask clarifying questions before I give comments, or?
No. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. Alrighty, so we've covered a lot of things here, but going back to the hotels, just wanted to mention, if I remember correctly, and City Manager, please correct me if I'm wrong, is it in our economic and workforce development plan to identify sites for hotels, or in one of our kind of strategic planning documents? I forget which one.
No, I don't think we're particularly looking for hotel sites.
Oh, okay. Maybe I misread that. Thank you. but either way, it is of note to mention that we do need the transient occupancy tax revenue, or TOT, and an additional hotel could help us increase revenues. And we didn't, pursue increasing TOT last year as one of the methods for increasing revenue facing the budget deficit, because those revenues weren't substantial, right? It was about 600,000 or so. So we could use another hotel. So I am glad to see that retained in the alternatives. And then there was mention in the discussion about BSL, about the biosafety levels. And I think I agree with Councilmember Howard in recollecting that there were no plans mentioned to pursue BSL level 3 and 4 any uses on the site, at least as the last meeting we had back in 2023. And I do agree with the Vice Mayor that they are highly regulated. And in terms of the variance that Councilmember Howard mentioned, I do want to just respond. I think it might be best to look at BSL levels not on a project-by-project basis, but as part of our kind of planning documents. For example, we did look at BSL levels as part of the downtown precise plan amendments, I believe, and also the transit district when we did that as well. So kind of taking more of a broad approach. And then just to get into my final comments, I agree that ultimately the environmental impact report is the time to fully in-depth study the hazards and proposed mitigations. I hear the concern, the emotion, and the fear ultimately about what this project, the impact this project could happen in our neighborhoods, and I hear that, I recognize it, and I really do believe that we can, lay some of those concerns to rest through the EIR, through the environmental impact report process, the CEQA process. So I do believe it is imperative that we identify the alternative tonight to be considered as part of the EIR, the CEQA process, and bring that back to council for action as soon as possible. And so that brings me to a kind of a final question. In the interest of getting many of our questions answered about the environmental impact of the project, could council action regarding whether to initiate the EIR on the original project and whichever alternative we identify tonight come back on the consent agenda? Does it have to require a public hearing? Jeff, I'm not sure if that's a question for you or for the city manager or city attorney. Thank you.
It's not required for you to have a public hearing. You can put it on the consent calendar. I think you'll get comment either way, either during public comment or if it was an agendized item. So it's probably going to take about the same amount of time at that night.
And we could pull it for discussion from the consent. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. I will leave it there. Thank you very much. To just conclude and answering these questions here, I am supportive of alternative 1 or 2, and as for the timeline, again, I think the sooner we can get answers, the better on this project, on the environmental impact. And I appreciate all of the outreach that has been conducted thus far by both the applicant and city staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sturgeon. Councilmember G.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for letting me weigh in on comments before you make yours. So thank you very much. as I said, this is a very large project, and I think, and to answer the questions before us tonight, I would have to pick my words carefully. I like the trend of alternative 2, which is smaller than the proposed project. I'd like to ask staff and the applicant to continue working with the community to see if it can get smaller than alternative 2. I don't have any number in my head, but perhaps reducing the height of, I think, the 2 buildings in front, N1 and 2, is that correct? Since they're right on the front there, maybe making them, reducing the height. I'm also interested in underparking the site, similar to some of the comments made by the commissioners and colleagues here, and discouraging drive alone. I mean, I know there's some invisible hands out there like finance companies that don't like underparking, but I'm reminded of South San Francisco where the life science community east of 101 was intentionally underparked to get people into TMAs and transits and shuttles. The difference there is the infrastructure getting from 101 to that part of the community isn't very supportive of that versus where we are with this particular project to 101 and Caltrain. I mean, you can ride your bike, you can almost walk if you really wanted to the Belmont Caltrain station versus Oyster Point in South San Francisco, walking to the South San Francisco Caltrain station. That's a hike. So I'm very interested in seeing if we can explore underparking the site, which would then lower the height of the parking structures potentially, and encouraging tenants to look at other ways of getting to the site. The other thing is, if you know, I'm as Councilmember Chusa, I'm used to going to research universities to do peer reviews and different things. And in all research universities, there's typically some sort of hotel on campus, so that once you get there, and usually my peer reviews are 5 days, I don't go anywhere else. I'm on campus for 5 days, walking to 50 interviews. I'm eating on campus. I'm going to the president's office. I'm going to dean's office. I'm not driving anywhere. And so if VMT is an important issue, which I believe it is, as the analysis moves forward, it'd be interesting to see the VMT without the hotel and VMT with the hotel on campus. I'm assuming, based on the argument, that there will be a difference, but it'd be good to see that in analysis. And then, you know, there has been community members that say, why do we need a hotel? They can stay at the Grand Bay. The Grand Bay could stop and close Monday if someone wanted to buy it and repurpose it to something else. But since this is a development agreement, perhaps there's a trigger in the development agreement that if something drops, then this goes forward, but it's entitled under the EIR and CEQA. And then I need to ask our city manager and city attorney to remind me, when we talk about a 25-year development agreement window, we've done that before with Stanford to a certain extent. I think Stanford, help me out, is what, at 10 and 10 or something like that?
I believe it actually goes up to 30. And so it's 10, 10, and 10 with milestones to be met in order to get to the full 30.
Right. So we have done something like that before, and we have negotiated with the applicants about the timing of community benefits. So if I remember, some of it came earlier, some of it came when permit was issued. And so we have done some of this before, and we can take a look backwards as lessons learned in terms to move forward, so that we're not, if we've made a mistake, we can learn from it and apply it here if this project moves forward. So I think there's a good lesson learning here with the Stanford, if it's really a 10, 10, and 10. I don't think it went 30 years, but I knew it went at least 20, so very good. So I think, you know, like I said, alternative 2 is the right trend line. If we can keep working with the community to see if we can tweak it smaller, underpark the site, amplify TMA, make the analysis on VMT for a hotel versus no hotel. Some of those things I think we can figure out the answers when the more detailed analysis occurs.
Thank you, Councilmember G, and thank you again to everybody for your questions, your comments. Members of the public who came out and are still here, thank you so much. And those tuning in, it is, I know this has been a long meeting, a long night, but this is such a major project, and I think the collective brain power we've brought tonight has certainly matched it. This has been such an incredible undertaking to just engage our community members and hear what the community thinks about this project. And what I've seen is that the developer, that our city staff, our community are all working together to incorporate that feedback. And it started with the guiding development principles, where at the forefront of all of this work, the community and developer came to decide what are going to be those guiding principles, those bumpers, so that we stay on track. And I think the city staff presentations and the workshops that have followed have been laser focused on the concerns of the neighborhood and what people are continuing to bring up. I've also had a chance to meet with the developer. I've had a chance to meet with neighbors. I've toured the site with neighbors to hear their concerns too. And so I know that there is a lot of advocacy, a lot of passion, a lot of sensitivity about this project. But I do think that the developer is working hard to respond to those community concerns, has made significant changes to the project to incorporate that input from the community. And so I do think that the changes to Alternative 2 suffice. I think that we should quickly move forward so we can begin studying the concerns, the questions that are still left there, right, by lots of neighbors asking, I like Alternative 2, but what about this, right? So I think the quicker we can start CEQA and the EIR process, the quicker we have answers and a game plan to address those. Lastly, community engagement isn't over. I know that, like I just mentioned, there are still ways that we can find out how we mitigate some of the concerns. I do think it says a lot that the group Stop Redwood Life, which has created a petition and regularly sends that to my council member colleagues and I, that a group like that has seen the work that has gone into this project and are now, even though they still have some concerns, are saying 68% of those folks really do think Alternative 2 is a path forward. So, like I said, this engagement is going to continue. I hope people stay engaged in the process and keep working with city staff, keep going to these meetings. It is, as the mayor, disheartening to hear that there are some residents who feel shy or feel like they can't go to these workshops to share. And I know that there are high passions and tension around the project, but we can disagree without being disagreeable or without becoming disrespectful. And so as this process continues, I'd like to just make sure that we do our effort to engage the process, make these meetings productive, right, so that we can really bring out the best project that's going to benefit the entire city, but also the residents who live right around this project. So with that, the timeline can always move faster with these types of projects. It has been noted that we have so many cities up and down the community, up and down the peninsula that are seeing these type of office spaces be created. And these tenants are Redwood City businesses right now, and they're looking to grow here in Redwood City. And so as much as we can, I want to make sure that we do our part so that they can grow here in this community and remain a part of it. So with that, I am in favor of Alternative 2 and beginning the CEQA process immediately. But that is the conclusion of my comments. So with that, City Manager, is that enough input? Oh, sorry about that, Councilmember Chu. Councilmember?
I was going to make a motion, but I can wait.
We don't.
So actually, thank you. There's not a motion needed. So many thanks. Everyone has matched the assignment tonight, which was to provide individual comments and feedback. Much appreciated. And so staff will be preparing materials for future council consideration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody, again, and thank you all for being here. With that, we'll move on to item number 6, adjournment. The next city council meeting will be held March 10th, this Monday. And so we'll see you very soon. And then the next planning commission meeting will be held on March 26th, 2025. And that's a special meeting. So thank you again for being here.